Welcome everybody to the Hippy Dippy Roundtable, which is a very special edition of the Hippy Dippy Roundtable for two reasons. The first reason is we have the return of the now second-time banned former Hippy Dippy champion, Vaush. Even if he lost his championship in extremely humiliating circumstances by not being able to defend the belt anymore because he is corrupt and evil and disgusting, Vaush bad. But he is back nonetheless because of my good graces. Welcome back, Vaush.
Second time for now. We'll get it up there. Don't worry. And thank you.
Happy to have you back. And the second reason this is interesting is because this is the first time the Hippy Dippy Roundtable has been hosted outside of the United States, particularly in Poland. I am near the Polish-Ukrainian border in Lublin, and possibly can't get into much detail. Possibly there might be one in Ukraine in the future. Who knows? Going to be very interesting couple of weeks. Happy to have you all here today for this very special edition of the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. And I know you all know the rules, so this should be smooth sailing all around. So I'm just going to start this by throwing it over to my lovely Warhammer 40k loving friend, Counterpoints.
Damn, you're going to start with me? So my name is Connor. I run an excellent YouTube channel named Counterpoints. I identify as centrist and center right. Based off of today's Twitter, I feel really fucking right wing right about now. But that's nobody else's problem. So yeah, if you want to check that shit out, then type in Counterpoints common spelling. And as Dylan mentioned, I do love Warhammer 40,000. And I have breakdowns of the new TV series that have come out on Warhammer Plus. And we've gotten like 500,000 views in the past 2 weeks off of that shit and like 4,000 subs. So pretty fucking awesome. Come check it out.
Can't wait for him to be a Warhammer 40k streamer full time. And now we're going to throw it over to IRI, my C-SPAN loving friend. Who is muted. Nope, there you go.
Yep. Thank you, Dylan. I want to say first, welcome back to Vaush. I think we're all thrilled to have you. I think we're all ready to forgive you for your egregious act that was committed. Everybody's talking about Destiny's 4-man hate raids, but I think what you did was way worse, Vaush, and you know it. I can't imagine how many people were harmed by your rhetoric, especially using the hard ER like that. Really, really sad. And with Will Smith being banned for 10 years, I'm amazed that Twitch let you get away with this, Vaush. But I'm a forgiving person. I'm ready to give you a second chance. So happy to see you back. And I go by I'm really important. I talk politics here on Twitch. If you couldn't tell by all the crazy posters behind me, we would love to have you coming out with us. So come by. I'm really important. All one word.
I just want to say to all the people who are normal and outside of the space that have been watching my coverage and are not used to Twitch politics, my friend Vaush, that was not a racist comment towards a certain group of people. It was towards white people, so it was okay that Vaush did it. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody knows that. And now I'm going to throw it over to my seems to be amazing picture-taking friend. We posted an amazing picture of LectureFan in the mountains for the promotional material for this video. He loves hiking. Probably one of my favorite facts about LectureFan is that he loves hiking, takes great pictures out there. Throwing over LectureFan.
Thank you, Dylan. Glad to be here. LectureFan, LCTRFan. I'm a conservative. Stream on Twitch every night. Host a radio show here in Montana, and practice law by day. Commercial litigation attorney. And looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on. Now I'm going to throw it to my disco-loving friend, James from the internet.
Mellow greetings, everybody. My name is James. I am from the internet. I talk about news, politics, and economics from a left perspective. And I also produce a YouTube video series called Left of Left for Act.tv. And as always, super excited to be in the land of fun.
Wonderful. Quick deviation. This is money. Now, you see this tiny thing. I hate to do this to everybody, but I'm bedazzled that this is a real country. This is money. Look how unbelievably small this is. How is anyone supposed to keep track of this?
How much money is that? Is that like a penny? What is it?
It's like a Polish penny. So it's worth about, like, I think almost 1/4 of an American penny.
How do you
so
buy freedom burgers with that? Doesn't make
you
any
can't
sense.
buy
Use a
anything
lot of
with
them.
this. To make it costs more to make this than it actually, like, it's probably 4 times the price to make this than it actually is worth, and it is unbelievable small. This whole country's economic system when it comes to money is monopoly. I love this country. It's beautiful monopoly system. Sorry, just wanted to throw that out to anybody else who's considering visiting this monopoly country. And I'm going to throw it now over to Sondsol.
Hi, I'm Sondsol. I like to very, very badly play video games on stream and argue with people on the internet.
Happy to have you here. And people make amazing fan art of you. I saw that banner someone made of your thing on Twitter, Sondsol. It was
Oh, it was so
amazing
beautiful.
fan art.
It was so good. Man, the guy really put a lot of effort into it. You can tell.
He did. Unironically, I commented. I was in the car going I think it was like going to talk to some local Polish person, and I looked at it, showed it to Geek. I was like, this person spent a lot of time doing this. Like, this is very well done. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
if
gonna throw it
only he
over
would talk to me. But oh well.
Okay, if you don't have context for that, don't worry, Chad.
Yeah.
You don't need the context. We're gonna throw it over to Taft.
Got it. I'm Taftaj. You can call me April if that's easier. I post sexy pictures online and also talk politics from a moderate right, far right, maybe secretly just a liberal perspective, usually pushing back against the sort of lefty narrative that's often on Twitch. Looking forward to the discussion. I think it'll be fun.
Excited to have you back. Now we're gonna throw it over to Sprouticus.
I am the Sprouticus. You can find me at twitch.tv/thesprouticus, twitter.com/thesprouticus. My YouTube is a mouthful, so I'm waiting to figure that out. But anyways, besides that, I'm a constitutionalist conservative and excited for the discussion tonight.
Happy to have you. And finally, my good friend Irish Laddie.
It's a pleasure to be back on this fine platform, if it can be called that. I am a anarcho-NATOist, a staunch defender for the abolition of all hierarchies, except for military alliances between members of the Western hegemon. Very consistent ideology. Anyway, very happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. And speaking of NATO and the Western hegemony, let's start with the first topic, which is going to be, should we send more weapons to Ukraine? We've already sent a lot of javelins. We've sent some Soviet reserves. We've sent a decent amount of goodies to Ukrainians. The question is, should we send more? Are we doing enough? But before we do that, I just want to go over the rules quick. I'm just going to go through it quick because most of you know the rules. Hey, everybody, don't break Twitch TOS. Don't drop any slurs here. Do that on your own time. Don't do it here, please. Besides that, don't go after people's immutable characteristics. I don't want anybody going after somebody else for immutable characteristics. I would really appreciate that, unless they're Italian. Next rule. The next rule is, when I'm talking, you're not talking. So if I'm talking, I'm just trying to moderate. I'm not going to come in here randomly and just start dropping elbows and start making points. I'm here to be the guide to the conversation. This isn't a fanatic panel. This is a Dylan Burns panel. I think that's everything. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's everything. Oh, also the notepad system is going to be kind of difficult tonight because I only have this laptop. So I will try to do the notepad system, but if it's a little scuffed, it's a little scuffed. If you don't know what that is, if you can't get into the conversation, raise your hand. I'll try to write your name down, and I'll bring it over to you eventually. Use it as a last resort, not a first resort. And if I've written your name down, it's going to take a while to get around to you. Don't expect it to be snappy. It could take upwards of 20 minutes. So, okay. Is that everything? Oh, Counter, you got a question? Oh, nope. Counter's just bullying me and making my job difficult, as he always does. I appreciate that, Counter. Okay, now let's go into the first question. Should we be sending more weapons to Ukraine? I'm going to start with James from the internet.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the surprising left position of, sure, why the fuck not? In for a penny, in for a pound. I mean, like, we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. We're already, churning and burning the military industrial complex, just pumping out fucking missiles as fast as we can 24/7, packing them into fucking FedEx box because, shipping them halfway across the planet. I mean, we're already in on this course of action. If we just stopped sending them weapons now, it doesn't make us any, less culpable, or depending on who you are, less rigorous in the application of more freedom across the planet. But it makes no difference if we stop now. So fuck it, let's keep going.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Lecture Fan.
Well, the problem with these types of questions always is there's this isolated question of should we send more? Well, you can't really analyze a foreign policy question like this without really looking at the big picture and the entire thing. So the real question is, like, should we completely scrap the Biden foreign policy and Democrat foreign policy, longstanding foreign policy that got us into this situation in the first place? Yes, we should. We would never be here if Trump was president. We would never be here if we had a Ronald Reagan-style peace through strength foreign policy. So this whole trick that leftists do, it's like Democrats come into office, get us into this horrible spot with this leftist foreign policy, and then they're like, oh, well, what should we do now? Should we do this? Should we do this? It's like, well, we would never be here if we didn't have all of your garbage foreign policy to begin with. So, yeah, we should. And Biden is ridiculous for not supporting sending the MiGs to Ukraine and not doing more to help Ukraine. But the reality is that there's problems with the Biden foreign policy, left, down, up, right, center, you name it. And that's what got us here is Biden's weakness and his pathetic obsession with global warming. That's a huge part of this. And, we need to totally revamp the foreign policy. We should never be here in the first place.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw it over to Vaush.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fully in favor of having more weapons sent over. As far as I'm concerned, this really is arsenal of democracy stuff. Russia is an authoritarian fascist government. Ukraine, while far from a perfect government, is not. I think it is defensible in every respect to contribute. I do not think that it meaningfully increases the likelihood of Russian aggression outside of Ukraine. In fact, I think it decreases it. The more problems Russia faces in Ukraine, the less likely they are to pursue military aggression as a future strategy. And I think it's the morally right thing to do. I think the Ukrainian people are the victims of this conflict, and that arming them against Russian aggression is the best way to, in the long term, prevent great violence against them.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw it over to Sondsol.
Yeah, I think that sending more weapons to Ukraine is probably a good thing. They're mounting their counteroffensives in the places that they can as Russia retreats to build up their arsenal. It would be a good thing for us to send them more weapons in case Russia is going to do something else crazy, because they seem pretty unpredictable lately. In the east of their country, they're still going to be fighting this war. So any assistance that we give them is good, and it helps the U.S. on the international stage. So yeah, I fully support it.
Wonderful. Oh, one more disclaimer I forgot to mention. Nobody on this show is an expert on anything we're going to be talking about unless they say otherwise. And you'll have to go check their credentials yourself. Do your own research. Don't get all of your political prescriptions from people on Twitch. That is a terrible idea. Please go use other sources. Now we're going to throw it over to Sprouticus.
Yes, I think we should be sending more weapons to Ukraine. I think we should be more involved in what's going on over there, especially considering the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, when the United States, Great Britain, and Russia took away Ukraine's nuclear weapons, and they were destroyed by Russia. And in trade, Ukraine were supposed to have the boundary or the borders of Ukraine respected by all three countries that were in the memorandum, and that they wouldn't use force to take over Ukraine. Russia has gone against everything they said in that memorandum, and so yes, I think the United States should be more involved in this, considering that we have a memorandum with Ukraine and Russia's breaking every part of that agreement.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Taft.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's not a ton of disagreement so far. I also think that it's a reasonable decision to send more weapons to Ukraine. As long as your goal is like the advancement and continuation of American soft power on a global stage. We've already sent Ukraine weapons, and sending them more continues to discourage Russian invasion and aggression if it's proven that there is going to be an international response and it's going to be thorough. So Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo a lot of the sentiments here. I'm afraid they won't be super unique, but we've already dedicated weapons so far, and I don't think we're going to push into any catastrophe by donating more as long as they continue to go through the proper channels.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to IRI.
Hell yeah, we should flood the Ukrainians with as many weapons as we can get into their hands. They've got Russia on their back foot, retreating, and they've dealt quite the blow to this formidable adversary that we've had to deal with on the global stage for decades now. And I say knock them while we can. Now, it's funny that Lecture fan says if Trump was president, none of this would have happened. And you know what, Lecture? Maybe you're right. Because if Trump had a second term, he'd be trying to withdraw us from NATO and breaking up the strongest defensive alliance the world has ever seen, or as Nick Fuentes called it, an empire. And Joe Biden has done a marvelous job of bringing our allies together, and even getting Germany to commit $100 billion to their defense. I think that this is just an opportunity we can't miss. I say flood the Ukrainians, these courageous people, with the weapons they need to hit back at Russia. Let's go.
Wonderful. So I can write down your position as flood Ukraine. Was that your position, IRI?
Sure.
Wonderful.
Also, I'm an expert at this subject. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to throw it over to counterpoints.
Yeah, so I don't think Russia is on the back foot. I think that they faced greater resistance than they anticipated, and as a result, they weren't able to take Kiev, as we would fight about. I think they're consolidating their eastern holdings, and as a result, yes, we should give the Ukrainians weapons. But this begs the question: is American globalist hegemony, militarist hegemony, good? That's been the argument from the nationalists the entire time, is that this is a provocation from the Western world by trying to tempt the Ukrainians away from their sphere of influence, that we've been trying to tempt them away from Russia, and as a result, this caused the conflict. Now, my stance is, yeah, American hegemony, as fucked up as it is, as fucked up as the global war on terror is, it's better compared to the alternatives, which would be Russian regional hegemony, Chinese global hegemony. I think we're the best in the fucking business, as fucked up as we are. So I'm kind of reframing the question a little bit, since we all agree that we should give weapons to Ukraine now. Is this our fault? And if it's not our fault, then should we just keep doing what we're doing, where we're always the center of economics and military power in the United States and in the world? And if somebody resists us, do we just arm their opponents and try to kill the fuck out of them? Because this is basically the history of the 20th and the 21st century as far as it goes with American empire. So I'm happy, I'll wrap it up, but I'm happy to hear a bunch of leftists saying, yeah, human freedom is good and democracy is good and all this kind of stuff. And I'm so happy that these people are willing to fight for their freedom. But at the same time, this comes from Western imperial militarist hegemony, and to have you squared that in your own framework. And I'll leave it there.
Okay, and that is the end of opening statements. It seems that everybody agrees on the specific question, but there's more disagreements about the surrounding questions around the conflict. So I think there's still some value in continuing this topic, so I'm going to. Is there anybody that wants to open us up?
Yeah. Well, counter nailed it. All these leftists that are all rah, send weapons. It's like, you guys have no principles. You guys are supporting this because there's a Democrat president that sent weapons there. It's totally contrary to everything the left has been saying about foreign policy and, oh, we should just talk and do diplomacy and be nice and, oh, military this and it's so bad and blah, 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 blah. And now all of a sudden, because we got a Democrat president that is doing it, and the only reason Biden is doing it is because that's what establishment American foreign policy does. Now you guys are all in favor of establishment American foreign policy. I mean, it's just hilarious to see the lack of principles. You guys are partisan hacks. You're supporting it because Biden supports it. That's it.
Well,
here's
the thing.
Wait, stop. Okay, there's multiple people trying to respond to that. Who wants to respond to that? Raise your hand. Okay, so I'm going to throw it over to Vaush because I'm a snake, then Sondsol.
Sure. So, like most shit that Lecture Fan says, you can just sort of dismiss it out of hand and then address the sort of circumstantial problems that he's not bright enough to get at. So with regards to principle here, there's not really much of an inconsistency. Russia is a fascist wannabe empire. Assisting countries in the defense against it is actually really in line with with left-leaning principles. Now, there are a lot of leftists for whom opposing American hegemony is the number one principle and everything else comes second to that. And I disagree with that, because sometimes you can uphold American hegemony by doing a thing that is on its own morally good. Now, in this case, I would say that we find ourselves in that situation. We were also upholding American hegemony with the invasion of Iraq, but I think that would be bad. Now, of course, that was a Republican president, so Lecture Fan can accuse that of partisanship as well. But yeah, no, there are definitely more, nuanced ways to navigate that particular moral conundrum.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Lecture Fan, if we're inconsistent with our values, you could say that, but even outside of ideology, we can look at just the year 2020 when Trump was trying to withhold aid to Ukraine and everybody was upset about that. Even then, people cared about Ukraine and not having Russia have the ability to invade over there by way of them not being able to defend themselves, right? In 2014, people were upset when Crimea got invaded and annexed, right? These are things that have been in the news cycle for a long time. And to pretend like people are just now caring about it out of nowhere because Biden good, Trump bad is insane.
Dude, most of what you just said was totally concocted for partisan reason. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama tried to do the reset. Remember the reset when Hillary Clinton came in and got the big button and said, we're going to reset relations with Russia. And it was all about being friendly with 2014. Russia. Yeah, exactly. Taft is exactly right. Saying, the 1980s wants its foreign policy back. We want to reset relations with Russia, and we're going to let them have Nord Stream 2. And by the way,
that was before 2014.
By the way, Obama didn't do anything when Ukraine got invaded. Ukraine got invaded under Obama, and Obama didn't do anything. You guys,
we imposed sanctions. We started sending weapons.
Obama's a bitch boy. Oh no, hold on. Obama's a bitch boy. Continue.
I mean, I think you need to understand there's been a shift in the foreign policy environment, especially with Trump and this right-wing isolationism. And I think left-wing people, especially people on the actual proper leftist people like Vaush, I think that they see that America as this democratic state has moved further left over time. And they compare it to places like Russia, which is comparatively right-wing and authoritarian. And they say that they'd rather have America have influence than Russia. So I think that's their logic. And, even if you disagree with American hegemony, as I think there are good criticisms of that, I don't think the leftists are really being inconsistent here.
I think they are being slightly inconsistent. When you take a look at what happened in Afghanistan, we pulled out of Afghanistan. The Taliban took over. The Taliban is now going back against the word when they said that girls would be able to go to school. They've now gone back against their word, and I haven't seen a single person on the left even discuss the Taliban going back against their word since we left Afghanistan. It is slightly inconsistent. I'm not going to say it's fully inconsistent, but it is slightly inconsistent with the way that it's normally brought about. I think
where's the inconsistency?
These are not comparable because you're talking about occupation and installment of a government in order to run things in ways that the Taliban are hugely against.
Wait, the Taliban lied.
So
yeah,
you went.
but you're comparing that to sending weapons, and these are totally different actions. Sending weapons versus actually trying to install regime change.
And then you wouldn't have said that Taft, you wouldn't have said that the Taliban was occupying Afghanistan when there was actually an Afghanistan government, because we didn't
I would say we were occupying it.
Okay, but what I'm saying is we didn't just hand the country to the Taliban. We handed the country to the Afghanistan government, which ended up falling, which we didn't support very much whatsoever. We want them to.
We supported them for 20 years. Yeah, we went in there. We taught their military how to fight. We gave them weapons. We had military bases. We fought the war for them.
Stop, Sondsol. Okay, next time it's gonna be a lot quicker. Sondsol, number one, your mic is fucked. Okay, it is. It's just it sounds like you're choking on it. Okay, so please address that. Besides that, one person talking at a time, please. Okay, so Taft and Sprout and Sondsol were talking. I see James also raised his hands. I've written everybody's stuff down. We're gonna have Taft, then Sprout in that order since they were already talking. I don't know if Vaush, this is a raised hand or not. I can't tell. What? Okay,
test.
You.
Is
Thank
my mic better?
Much. Do it with
I'm only talking to you in my chat.
Okay.
My chat. Do you guys hear my voice?
think the thing is that leftists are not suggesting that we
better or
go
worse?
into Ukraine and like occupy territory
Oh my God, it's,
with
like,
American
peaking
troops.
super hard.
That's
Why the
not the
fuck is that
suggestion.
happening
And they're
all of
not
a sudden?
suggesting we occupy Russian territory. None of that, right? So I think the situation
test.
when we're comparing like the Taliban to Ukraine is not really comparable in like the scale of things that are being supported by the left. And again, like I think you can criticize American hegemony. I think there are really good criticisms for that. But I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a case of hypocrisy.
Okay, well, I mean, if I was able
Okay,
to
I'm
finish
just
my
gonna
statement
try with
before everyone
this.
decided, everyone and their sister decided to interrupt me, we left the Afghanistan government to defend for themselves. We gave them little to no support after we left. We just left them and said, "Hey, good luck. We know the Taliban's there, and hey, give it your best try." That is certainly not what we're doing with Ukraine. We are taking a completely different take with Ukraine. We are backing Ukraine. We're giving them hundreds of billions of dollars in weapon systems, and we're doing all of this for Ukraine, which is not what we did with Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, the withdrawal was underneath Biden. So you see two very different outlooks from the left. The left cheered the withdrawal of Afghanistan. And then we're completely satisfied with the Taliban taking over the country. And so with that
You
being
realize
said,
we're not occupying Ukraine, right?
with that being said, the Taliban did do exactly what Russia is doing. They invaded and they took it over. So like, when you're talking about this, that is what happened, and it was a completely different take.
These are obviously incomparable. Ukraine has an independent, sovereign, democratic government that we are selling weapons to at their behest to help them fight a war.
Which
Whereas in
Afghanistan had.
Afghanistan, we occupied their government. We didn't stop providing aid to Afghanistan. We left with our troops, and then immediately there was no longer an Afghanistan government for us.
Vaush, did Afghanistan get hundreds of billions of dollars in defensive weapons?
Wait, hold on. First of all, Ukraine hasn't gotten hundreds of billions of dollars in defensive weapons. And if you want to compare the amount spent on both of those countries, Afghanistan, I promise you, received far more money than Ukraine has in weapon sales. These are incomparable.
One-dimensional.
Yeah, this is like like right now you're smashing like an apple and like a brick together and trying to compare them. And by the way, why is it always this like this limp attempt at like hypocrisy, this hypocrisy that? Do you or do you not agree with the geopolitical strategy here? It's always this like, well, if it was under Trump, you would hate it. I don't care what you think I would act like if it was under Trump. We're talking about real people living real lives in Ukraine. I don't know why we have to take their lives and treat them as like a ping pong ball in this partisan game where we assign people's relative like Democrat, Republican. It's just dumb. Like, why?
No, but I already said that the left was making the correct take with the Ukraine war. Unfortunately, they were incorrect in Afghanistan, and it seems to be a little bit hypocritical because when you talk about the Taliban, when the Taliban did horrific things in taking over Afghanistan, they killed civilians, they killed journalists, etc., and so on. It was okay when they did it, but all said it's not okay when Russia does it because
can I interject for this?
It was completely okay with the Taliban taking over Afghanistan.
Wait. Okay. So the order of the list is I, Counter, James, Vaush, and Sondsol, but Vaush just talked, so I'm taking him off the list. Got him. So I'm going to throw it first to Counter, since Counter wants to respond to that. Then we're going to go to IRI.
Yeah,
Then
and
James
then I
and
would,
Vaush.
and then I would say that I have a mild amount of expertise in this subject as a military veteran and somebody who's like a history nerd. Okay, so Sprout, the reason why I'm objecting to what you're saying is we did provide billions of dollars in training and material and weapons to the Afghan government. We did support them for the better part of 20 years. And what every single, like, you could have asked any veteran of the Afghan war back in 2011 what we were effectively doing. And basically what we were doing is we were pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. I am perfectly fine with us cutting our losses because the truth is there wasn't much of an Afghan national government that was willing to fight for the country. The one thing that I have insane applause for the Ukrainian people is I thought they were going to fold in a week. I thought they were going to fold in a couple of days. I thought they were going to say, fuck it, it's not worth it. I'm not dying for this fucking government. I'm not dying for this country. And instead they said, fuck that, we're going to fight for it. And so as long as you actually have a force on the ground who's willing to fight for these espoused ideals, democracy, liberalism, women's rights, education, all that kind of shit, then I'm perfectly fine supporting those people. Whereas in Afghanistan, the amount of people who were willing to actually fight was very minimal. And on top of that, we saw long histories of basically Taliban shadow governments stepping in the second the Afghan central government went to sleep. So for me, it's a question of corruption where I think it was fair to cut our losses after 20 years, regardless of the objectionable shit that's happening in Afghanistan now, which, by the way, I'm sure is super fucked up. I'm pretty sure they're going through a famine. I'm pretty sure the Taliban central government is not supporting their people. I'm pretty sure they're preventing girls from going to work, but you didn't want to fucking fight for it. Whereas we have hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians who are fucking putting their lives on the line right now in order to fight for it. You know, fucking God bless these people, and I will support them.
I agree,
And
Cypher.
the only objection that I have,
But
just to try
there's
to twist the
levels of
conversation just a
things.
little bit, is like, I'm asking the question, is this our doing? Okay? Is mixed economy, capitalist hegemony attracting governments to our orbit? And then as a result of that, we're coming into conflict with national governments. And then we are using these people as pawns. I think Vaush was saying was basically, why is it this bipartisan thing? Is the bipartisan battle between Western hegemony and nationalist governments worth the bloodshed and treasure it's going to cost?
So before we switch, there is something I'm going to kind of push back against you. Counterpoint is that the Taliban did all these horrific things after they've taken control of Afghanistan. Even while they were taking control of Afghanistan, they did all these horrific things, and yet we're still talking about going to the Iran. We're still talking about like nuclear deals. We're still talking about stuff like that, and trying to bring Taliban up as a legitimate leader of Afghanistan. And I think that in any other circumstance that we would be like, no, that's completely incorrect to go around killing civilians, to not let girls go to school, etc., and so on. But now we're trying to like assist Afghanistan or the Taliban in Afghanistan in becoming its legitimate government.
Well, my counter argument to that would be that it didn't seem like there was a lot of groundswell for counter-Taliban support on the ground, and it seemed like the few counter activities were snuffed out almost immediately. So it's either let these people starve or help them out and deal with the politics that are on the ground, or deal with the idealized politics. And I don't think we have room for idealism in Afghanistan. We learned an anti-idealist lesson in Afghanistan for 20 fucking years.
I love that Sprouticus
Yeah,
is
very
so
true.
wrong that he's getting pounded on by his fellow righties. Absolutely hilarious. The difference is in Afghanistan.
I'm coming
that
for you next,
300,000
just because you said that.
Their
Look,
300,000 strong army folded in the face of 60, 70,000 Taliban. It was embarrassing, and we were counting on them to try to back them up. Their president left the country, unlike President Zelensky, who said, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. So I don't even see how you compare these two. Biden was just playing out the final quarter of Trump's plan that he had enacted. And it's funny that these guys say, if we were only in charge, if only President Trump was in there, this would never happen. That's all these guys ever got. They don't have any solutions. They're like the What If comic book series over here on the right.
Say that.
Boy, I just want to point out also, you know, even after 20 years in Afghanistan and hundreds of billions invested, if we had removed our occupation and then the ANA had engaged in a protracted battle with the Taliban, I'm pretty sure we would have sold the ANA weapons still, right? Like, I'm pretty sure if it was like 3 months after our withdrawal and they're like fighting over territory and we're getting news updates on the red lines, like we'd be like, yeah, we didn't even get time to sell the weapons. Like, by the time the first shipment of javelins would have made it over, the Taliban had already won. So I think we would have.
Which is our fault. It's our fault though. That is 100% our fault in the way we left Afghanistan.
What was the alternative?
How long do you want to stay there,
the way
bud?
we entered
I know-
Afghanistan.
I mean,
Okay,
the
so
thing-
I just get interrupted like this.
Wait, stop, okay.
Maybe not
James, I know you're on the list, okay? I
For the
said,
love of God.
James, I told you it would be 20 to 20
know.
plus minutes. It's been 13. I already gave you the warning in advance, okay? Wonderful. Anarchists in order. I know it's a difficult thing, huh? Anyway, I'm gonna throw it back over to Sprout to finish the point he was saying. People can respond to it. Then we're going to James afterwards, so we can go back down the list. Sondsol, you're still on the list. Don't worry.
Okay, and like I said, we left Afghanistan. We left Afghanistan in a terrible way. How we actually left Afghanistan or brought our troops out of Afghanistan was an absolutely awful way to do so, and it led to the Afghan government losing. And I think that we could have done a lot more to prevent that. I think we could have done a lot more to help the Afghan government and to not just kind of pick up our shit and say good luck. And I think that it should have been done that way, and I think that we did Afghanistan wrong just by picking up our shit and saying, "Well, peace. Hope you have fun."
Yeah, totally. We demoralized them, and that's what led to it.
Oh, come on. We would have had to pump 20,000 troops
What?
in there to try to
No,
maintain
dude.
things.
No,
And you're,
all
so
right.
you're advocating for boots on the ground. It's a joke.
We had 2,500 troops in Afghanistan with no deaths for 18 months under Trump, and it was stable. And Biden comes in and just totally F's it up. That's the facts.
Because they
That's
were waiting
because-
for us to leave.
Yes, the Taliban was committed to us leaving, and they knew that we were out of there. So why fight with us? Why extend it any further?
If they shot an American, that would be an excuse for us to stay. They wanted us to leave.
But
Yep.
all the Republicans were pro getting out of Afghanistan, like the whole time he was in office. And now, like, it's just funny you would talk about partisanship, lecture fan. Okay, did the withdrawal from Afghanistan go perfectly? No. Is this the topic of today's panel subject? No. Shut up. Yes. I do want to return though to what Counterpoints was talking about, because the whole "is it our fault here" thing, I think that's more pointed, right? Because that's how people, they tend to circle this around, like, well, maybe Ukraine should be defended, but well, we did this, and I don't think we did. I know that's like a big lefty point or whatever, but I feel like it's possible to assign agency outside the U.S. hegemon, and Russia has pretty clearly demonstrated an independent interest in traditional imperialism alongside its borders. So I don't like to assign everything. When you blame everything on America, you take agency away from other powers, sometimes bad powers.
I think the other thing on that point,
After Taft, though, we got to go to James.
okay, just to like counterpoints, is like in theory, there's a world where America could have acted differently and discouraged the Russian invasion. But I think it would require America to basically not threaten Russia in any way, including like economically, right? So it would require America to like not grow economically, not push for soft power or hard power overseas, right? Because it's all of those things that make Russia feel threatened. The solution, like the only way America could have like stopped Russian aggression totally, is to just like lie over and allow Russia to do whatever, and continue to grow or that sort of thing. So I think it's a sort of absurd assertion, because the ways in which we're responsible are not really like things you can really morally require a country to do, which is lie over.
James?
I want to be respectful to James.
I merely just wanted to make two small points of fact, like, I don't know, back in the day. Number one, I don't know why we're still talking about Afghanistan, but Trump was the one who signed the orders to pull out of Afghanistan. And if you had gone with the original Trump date, the original pullout date of Afghanistan would have been sometime back in January. Biden actually moved it like 3 months out to deal with the logistics, which Trump can't even spell logistics. And number two, I take offense with Lecture Fan referring to everybody to the left of Ronald Reagan's corpse as a leftist. It really pisses me off. Everybody, y'all can go back to discussing 50 Shades of Libness now. I just needed to throw those two things out.
So I mean, I honestly don't. You're trying to point out hypocrisy, and I don't think I showed any hypocrisy here. I'm still pro getting out of Afghanistan. I just think it should have been done in a much different fashion. I think the way Biden did it was an absolute failure, and I think that if Trump was still in office when it was the original pullout date, that Trump would have pushed it out just like Biden did. And so yeah, I'm still pro getting out of Afghanistan. I just think the way we did it was an absolute disaster.
I mean, I think the thing, Spartacus, is that in order to fundamentally change our pullout from Afghanistan, we would have had to change our occupation strategy as well, right? So, like, it's not enough to just like change the exit, because the Taliban had continually been able to propagandize and work with people gathering support elsewhere in the country before they actually came in.
I don't know what you mean,
and,
Crazy Fist. I'm
retook
not
the
gonna lie.
government. And in order to stop that, we would have had to have like massive crackdowns, martial law, etc., which is something that I don't think the American government was prepared to do. And so either way, it was going to be, a complete shit show, however we got out, unless we like reevaluated our occupation strategy beforehand. So I think that like saying that like Biden just like poorly planned the exit is a little bit simplistic, because there's not really like a good way you can exit from that situation.
There's a better way, and the better way wasn't taken. So
Yeah, so actually backing Sprout up a little bit, I do think the extraction was dog shit, but I also applaud Biden for eating a shit sandwich because it was his turn to eat it. So we were there for 20 years. We spent billions of dollars. We lost a few thousand troops. Hundreds of thousands of Afghans have been killed. There wasn't a groundswell of support for the national government. The national government was deemed to be pretty fucking corrupt and didn't have a lot of popular support. So it was just a question of who gets to eat the shit sandwich. The truth is that Biden said, okay, I'm almost dead anyways. I'll eat this shit sandwich. And then he decided to eat it. Now, the problem with it is that basically there is a way to withdraw, meaning that we left a bunch of interpreters on the ground. We left a bunch of our friends on the ground. We left a bunch of people who we knew were going to be executed on the ground. So that is the fuck up, in my estimation, is there were people who tried to execute our failed project, and they were going to be liable to be betrayed the second that we withdrew. So not thinking about that, and then also just crunching it down to a 30 to 90 day period and just saying, fuck it. If you can make it to an airport and a couple of Marines get suicide bombed, fuck it. Who gives a shit? That's like, in the grand scheme of things, fuck it. Like, that is the attitude that I actually was disgusted with at the time. But the broad swaths of pulling the plug on that is I'm perfectly fine with. And then the reason why I keep beating the American hegemony drum or whatever is because I'm an apologist for American hegemony. I do think that, like, on the global scale, compared to nationalist rival powers, compared to international or rival powers with global aspirations like China, I do think that we have a not a moral right, but you can compare the levels of violence and manipulation in economic warfare and socio-political warfare and compare it to that of our rivals, and then make a moral case for our intervention and also mixed economy capitalism and democracy and republicanism. I think you can make those arguments, but it seems like a lot of leftists don't like that, and I'm kind of sad that they're not here today. Instead of getting a nuanced take, I would love it if Hinkle or fucking Hassan was shitting blood right now and just screaming America bad, America bad. So you guys are a disappointment.
Well, we're the real ones. Those guys are just frauds saying nonsense. So what do you expect?
I want to throw it over to Sondsol, who's been waiting patiently.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to the point that Socraticus keeps on trying to make, I don't think that any left-leaning person on this panel was super enthused with the pull out of Afghanistan. Like, pulling out of Afghanistan was something that all of us wanted to do, but the way that it happened probably wasn't the best outcome. And I think that everybody here has spoken out against that. Oh, look at that, Socraticus isn't here, I just noticed. But in response to counterpoints saying, is this our fault? I don't think so. I don't think that if a country wants to ally themselves with us or with our allies, and by proxy be allies with us, I don't think that any other country has the right to say that they can't. So I don't think that we can say that that's our fault, even if you want to say that functionally it's going to provoke them to do that. At the end of the day, if they also have that opportunity to pull them over to their side through non-aggressive means, through military means. So I don't think that we can say that it's our fault that Ukraine got invaded.
Yeah, so one of the strongest arguments that I've heard from the other side, so to speak, the kind of pro-Russian or at least pro-isolation side, is the idea of like real politics. I think it's kind of bullshit, but at the same time, what they would argue is that, like, the Russian perspective, they feel like they're in a corner, they feel disrespected, they don't feel like they have control over their sphere of influence, and as a result, they do view themselves as a military power and as a historical power that was comparable to Europe and comparable to the United States. So while we can kind of laugh and say, who the fuck needs a blue water navy, just be better at economics, dumbass, from their perspective, us basically pulling Ukraine into our sphere or pulling them into our orbit and then potentially losing Crimea and that deep water access is an affront to their, like, national hegemony. So this is kind of what I'm really poking at, because I want people to consider it. There are principles that I believe in. They're liberal, universal, humanist principles. The right to freedom of speech, the right to freedom of conscience, and the right to self-defense and limited government. I believe in these things, and I think they're universal human goods. But when you get into the real politics side of things, this means that if you're trying to spread that to a country that is bordering another power that doesn't like that shit, you're going to get people killed. So all I'm really looking for is just an acknowledgement that these principles are important and we're willing to spread them through socioeconomics. But when it comes down to battle, these things are worth fighting and dying for. Because I don't think I've seen that kind of spine in Western liberalism in 3 decades.
But you're
I mean, I think
presupposing that we're
you're-
going to that there's not going to be death anyway. You're presupposing that
Mhm.
by us not helping Ukraine in any way, that Russia isn't going to bulldoze over them anyway. They got invaded in 2014.
Russia would, but there would be less death.
I mean,
They
I
wouldn't
think the
fight.
You
thing
don't
is that
know
like
that,
we
right?
could
I know
not
that.
involve at all in Ukraine, not open up diplomatic channels with them, and just like leave them to Russia, right? And that's like the totally non-aggressive, like zero aggression, totally passive route, right? And I think you're right about Russia's perspective on this, but I think the reality is that if it weren't Ukraine, it would be another neighbor, right? And so the expectation then is just that the United States never makes friends with anyone near Russia. And if Russia takes over a country, then it doesn't make friends with like other neighbors to the country that it was taken over. And that sort of like line of thinking is how you get like total passivity. So I think that like, yes, it's possible that like America could do things that were like, no, not inflammatory at all. But I think the expectation doesn't, or I think that like that acknowledgement doesn't justify Russia's actions.
Well,
I'd
Vaush,
like-
are you down there? Like, I'm sorry, you had your hands. Are you casting a
I'm
spell,
so-
or are you raising your hand? I can't tell.
I'm raising my hand, and I was
Okay.
I was so polite. You know, I'm really trying to not get banned again. I just want to say one of the big issues that I have with the realist political model, like geopolitics, is that there's no such thing as a regional hegemony anymore for a superpower. It feels like that political model was built in the days, or like it's meant for the days when people like fought wars with spears and shields, you know? But we now live in a global nuclear armed world. We have obviously regional interests, you know, but it's not limited to that. After all, like America has spent trillions fighting wars for political interest in the Middle East, which is damn near on the other side of the planet, you know? So the issue is like, if we lived in a world where countries can only really wage war with their neighbors, you know, before all this modern technology, then I would agree with the realist perspective, because one superpower conducting an invasion to conquer a less progressive superpower to spread those liberal values of democracy and freedom could end up turning into a multi-centuries long intractable conflict that leads to an unimaginable amount of death and brings about like no positive outcomes. But we don't live in that world anymore. Every country on earth is now interested in every country on earth. The Cold War proved that. And with that in mind, ceding regional hegemony to Russia, it doesn't stop with Ukraine, it's the world. Russia no more wants us in Ukraine than it wants us in the Middle East or in Latin America. China no more wants us right next to them than they do want us in Africa. Everyone wants everything, and we can all get it now too. So this model doesn't really work. The closest thing we can do now, I think, is to encourage all superpowers to adopt political worldviews where they're more likely to cooperate with each other than compete. And in that respect, conflicts which break the back of countries like Russia, which don't get along, which aren't willing to use, let's say, traditional trade relations to moderate its engagements with the West, those countries need to be brought into line, not as allies, but as countries that use economic power as a way of competing rather than military power, because that is far less destructive than whatever it is they've been on about. I think this is an effective way of pursuing that goal.
Okay, so
you know,
sorry, go ahead.
in all
buddy.
fairness, didn't we try that with pipeline diplomacy, like with Germany, and it didn't seem to work out with Russia?
I think it is a difficult, I don't think that's like a sure shot or anything. I just think it's like the desirable way of moving forward. It should be noted, though, that Russia and all their subsidiaries is one of the primary antagonists to green energy development for obvious reasons, oil, natural gas they control. So the less we play into our need for their resources, I think, the less of a relative pull they'll have on our governments, and the more they're going to have to find other, say, more egalitarian ways of engaging in trade relations.
So this is the question, though. So or at least I'm talking about individual human rights, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, right to self-defense, up to including your own government. I know that's an American thing, not a European thing, but that's still a Western thing, I guess. And then basically limited government, meaning it follows rules. these are Western conceptions. These are European conceptions that we're kind of putting onto other places that don't agree with that thing. Now, we can promote it and say that it's universal and that a lot of people want it, and we can promote it through, like you said, economics, culture, war, trade, all that kind of stuff. My question is, so this economic integration that you're talking about, does it come as a package deal with the morality of the Western world? And when somebody bucks the trend, where, so for instance, like Russia is like, fuck you, we're nationalist, we're Christian, we don't like gays, and we're gonna influence our neighbors as we fucking feel like it. And if you want to stop us, then you need to come over here and actually say that to my fucking face. That's pretty much the Russian attitude right now. Is that worth blood? My answer is yes, but I'm poking that because I want people to say yes or no.
If it ends in nuclear war, then no, just because the end of the world is basically the final stopping point for any ethical quandary. But the goal would be to make all countries that have nukes, or ideally all countries in general, so economically codependent that any country breaking rank to fight a war would have its economy crippled. Like England right now, if they were to declare war on France, I know, but whatever.
Based.
Like right, I know, but leaving aside that and the nukes and everything else, like the resulting economic devastation England would face just from its allies no longer trading with it immediately, like their country would basically just collapse and burn, like instantly. That would be the goal everywhere, and countries are still going to break rank from that. But broadly, I think these values are worth fighting for. I don't think they're Western values necessarily. Maybe in the modern incarnation we associate them with the West, but if you go back to the Islamic Enlightenment or the Golden Age of Islam, or like even back to like the beginning of the civic state back in China, like I think some of these conceptions go back way farther. But I think these are things worth taking great strides towards building in the most effective ways possible.
Okay. Based.
Okay. I'm seeing this conversation seems to be coming to a close. Is everybody fine with going into closing statements so we can move on to the next topic?
Yes.
Wonderful. We're going to start with counterpoints, then IRI, James, lecture fan. You guys get the order at that point. Okay, going left to right. So counterpoints, you start.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've identified as making me centrist or right wing is apologism for American hegemony. Despite the global war on terror and the invasion of Iraq being mistakes that we've made as a global hegemon, I still think that the promotion of democracy, mixed economy, capitalism, and whatever values you want to call these, technocracy, anti-corruption, limited government, respect for republicanism, rule of law, that kind of stuff. These are values that I think should be universal and should be promoted culturally, economically, and militarily, if necessary, as a last resort. So I like that, and I promote that. So what I'm seeing is a lot of people who were critical of the global war on terror, rightfully so, are a little bit more gung-ho about the war in Ukraine because it's more morally clear. That excites me. That makes me think that some of the moral arguments that I've been making for the past decade can appeal to a broader audience. The only thing that I'm asking for is if you disagree with this project, if you're more nationalist, isolationist, you want, all that kind of stuff, feel free to come and fucking argue with me because I got more agreement than I was expecting tonight. So appreciate it and yield.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the original question, which was, should we send Ukraine weapons? And I say yes, because they have really given Russia a bloody nose. Remember, Russia's goal was to come in and denazify the country, take over, put a puppet government in place, and they seem to have failed miserably in that regard. All they can do is indiscriminately attack the civilian population and try to just flatten cities. And they are achieving that to some degree, but there is a scenario where Ukraine actually ends up winning this in some way. So I say flood these people with the weapons. Again, they have the courage and the resolve to fight, and that's the difference between them and Afghanistan. I think that they've also shown how Russia is a paper tiger. And for years, we lived with this adversary, and we all treated Russia with kid gloves because we're so scared of them. I think this is the beginning of the end of the Putin regime, as Navalny, the leader of the opposition, has said in Russia. So in the end, I think that this, in the long run, may turn out for the best for the Ukrainian people so they can finally live their lives the way they want to.
All right, cool. I'm a jump in on the end here then. again, I said it when I started, and I'm gonna say it because apparently some people didn't hear it. Like, it was horrible that we got dragged into this in the first place. It's horrible that fucking people are dying. All of it is a horror. The question was, should we continue sending weapons to Ukraine, which pretty much kills the conversation of should we have been involved in the first place. And yet for some reason, there seems to be some desire from some people on the panel for us to, I don't know, somehow couch it or put, six equivocations in front of saying, but yes, we should continue to send them weapons now because we're already there. I just think it's a really weird, petty distinction just to, I don't know, cause ideological confrontation on a panel when everybody's pretty much agreed that it sucks when you're getting militarily pounded by a superior force and literally hundreds of thousands of people who don't want to be involved in war are getting fucking killed. And we're going to wank it over the fucking, linear distinction of whose political ideology is right in saying, yes, we should. It's incredibly ghoulish, and I'm fucking boggled, and I yield.
Okay, next we can throw it to Lecture Fan.
Well, it's glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that everybody here basically disagrees with the Biden foreign policy, because by claiming that we should be sending more weapons to Ukraine, you're basically saying we're not sending enough right now. That's what when you say we should send more, you're saying we're not sending enough. And of course, the Biden hasn't sent stuff that's been needed and stuff like that. So I think that's great. And, I love to hear everybody disagreeing with Biden foreign policy. What's funny, though, is that people actually think that they're agreeing with Biden when they're saying this, which is quite ironic, of course, and I think it's important to call out hypocrisies and inconsistencies on these types of things, because when you talk about foreign policy, like I said at the beginning, you can't just talk about like an isolated incident. Foreign policy is something that you have to talk about broadly, and it's complicated, and you have to think about how these things affect other things and stuff like that. And so when I hear Democrats, suddenly all of a sudden it's okay to give weapons after for decades and decades they say, oh, we should never give weapons. Those weapons will just be used against us. Whenever America gives weapons, they always end up being used against us. And oh my gosh, America's an imperial power, and we shouldn't be pushing our ideas on everybody else and blah, blah. But then when there's a Democrat in office, they're all of a sudden in favor of it. I think it's important to call that out because we need consistency in our foreign policy. And frankly, I think it's great that everybody wants to support Ukraine. I fully support Ukraine. I hope they win the war, and that's all fantastic. By the way, I love to see how intimidated and scared of me Vaush is, because all he can do is act like a third grader. You're dumb. Shut up. You're dumb. Shut up. Love to see the intimidation. It's so obvious. Have a little self-respect and dignity, dude.
Come on, Vaush. Throw it over to Sondsol.
Yeah. So I don't think that there's any contradiction with
point,
any
Sondsol.
of the.
Oh my God,
Oh,
I'm being
hello.
blown
I'm
away
muted.
right now.
Yeah, okay. I don't think that there's any contradiction between any of the positions any of the left-leaning individuals hold here. I think that's really stupid. I think it's really good to send more weapons to Ukraine. Ukraine should be the most armed state in Eastern Europe. It should be like a porcupine. For every single time Russia wants to go into Europe, they should have to go through Ukraine, and Ukraine should fuck them up every single time. So that's my stance.
Okay, gonna throw it now over to Taft.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I think it's legitimate to send weapons to Ukraine is because we're not dealing with the same situation in Afghanistan. We're not like arming the brave Mujahideen fighters. We're not arming a rebel group. Ukraine is like a state with official communication channels, and we're not trying to occupy Ukraine either. So the risk of the weapons being used against us is not the same in Ukraine as it has been elsewhere. So again, I think that like the comparison is just a little bit one-dimensional over and over. Insofar as America wants to push back against foreign rivals and, enhance and defend its soft power, sending weapons to Ukraine is probably a good idea. And just to counterpoint his point, the sort of realist nationalist perspective of why this might be a good idea is America's concerned about its position and its reputation on the global stage. And by bolstering that, by showing its ability to help allies, it makes sure that it's able to continue to secure alliances in the future and keep the friends that it has. They feel secure knowing that we've got their backs. So that would be like the nationalist, very like real grounded reason for helping Ukraine that isn't just, ethics, although there is the ethical argument as well. So that's my perspective.
Okay, I'm going to throw it now over to Sprout.
Yeah, we owe it to Ukraine. Like I said at the very beginning, we owe this to Ukraine. The 1994 Bangladesh, or I don't want to say Bangladesh. It's something else. It's but there was a memorandum in 1994.
Budapest memorandum.
Budapest. Okay, the Budapest memorandum when Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, which was a major defense against Russia, is the fact that Ukraine was a nuclear power. And they did this because the United States, Britain, and Russia said that they weren't going to attack Ukraine, that they were going to respect its borders, as it was in 1994. These rules were not followed by Russia. Hell, they weren't even followed by us or Great Britain when Russia decided to go against the memorandum. And so, yes, we owe it to Ukraine to back them in this fight, because we told them that, yeah, if you give up your nukes, we will protect you. So yeah, we owe it to protect Ukraine.
Okay, Vaush.
Yes, I echo the sentiments which have been presented here. Defending Ukraine is all well and good. I think it should be noted, of course, that there are going to be long-term negative consequences associated with us choosing to do so, and that we have to own, accept, and respond to those consequences as well. Whether that be right-wing militant groups in Ukraine using all the weapons they got to wreak havoc, or violence that spreads across the border into Hungary or Poland or what have you. I feel like, or Romania and Poland. These are possible outcomes we have to look out for. I just think that the outcome of us not having assisted them would have been far worse. I feel we're responsible for the consequences of our inaction as well. I do think, however, that concerns to that extent have been overstated. Ukraine is quite a bit more stable than like Afghanistan is, and I don't expect things to go the same way, even if they do win and completely beat back Russia.
How do you respond to the accusations of cowardice made by Lecture Fan?
Oh,
That's
I
incredible.
forgot to respond to those. I'm sorry. Okay, wait. Calling people dumb and telling them to shut up is an all ages repertoire of insults. Okay, that's not. Listen, it's for third graders, it's for eighth graders, it's for adults. It's for grandpas. It's for everyone. Everyone uses those.
I don't do
it's
it.
a timeless classic. It's a staple. It's an American classic. American as apple pie. I make no apologies for my behavior.
Wonderful. Now we're going to go into the next topic. One moment. I got to remember what the next topic was. Thank you, Danabo, for organizing this for me while I'm in Poland. The next topic is the midterm elections. Is it time to drop electoralism for direct action is the sub-question. And what do you think will be the deciding issue of the upcoming midterms? So there, you got your two questions there. I'm going to throw it first to James.
Well, surprisingly, I'm not going to tell people to bag electoral politics because electoral politics is just one of the many bags in the weapons, and more often than not, a diversity of tactics will usually get you further than a single straight-lined approach. I believe in wise old leftists once coined that term. However, anybody who relies solely on electoralism to somehow make meaningful conditions to their material existence are absolute fucking fools and crackpots. And you should be engaged in as much direct action and mutual aid as possible at a community level as often as possible, because at every twist and turn, the people that you vote for you will completely disregard your needs and wants at any time that it is politically convenient for them. Also, I believe there was something else in there, but I don't know. I'll let that drop, and we'll wait until we get to the meat of this sandwich.
Okay. Again, there's two questions. Number one, what do you think the deciding? What do you think is going to be the deciding issue for the midterms? And two, dropping electoralism for direct action. Don't know over the Lecture Fan. Oh, well, sorry. You can finish.
It's okay. No, I was just gonna bump in just real quick. So number two is it's going to be inflation because people vote with their wallets. The right wing has the added bonus of using the culture war, like they did in the special election in Virginia to sweep 5 seats, even though they were outspent 4-1. But at the end of the day, the majority of people are going to come out and vote with their wallets, and the Republicans are going to keep beating the drum on inflation. So there's your second answer.
Okay. Lecture Fan?
Well, first of all, direct action is some like progressive buzzword that only leftists use. So, not sure, if that question is directed to people on the right too, if that's just towards progressives. But the midterm elections are going to be decided on the radical social issues that the left is trying to shove down the throats of the American people, and how the left in this country are trying to force their religion on everybody. It's really horrible the way the left is trying to force their religion on America. And inflation's a big deal. The economy is a big deal. Biden, the fact that Biden can't even talk, he can't walk, he can't even be president. That's a big deal. And the fact that the Democrats continue to support Biden, although we are starting to see, I think, a lot of Democrats move to try to get Biden out of there. You start to see that with the media and the Democrats even confirming that Joe Biden is in fact corrupt. Hunter Biden was doing international business deals with our foreign adversaries. Joe Biden did know about it. Joe Biden's been lying about it. Joe Biden took Hunter Biden on a trip to China in 2013, and 2 days later, Hunter Biden got millions and millions of dollars from communist Chinese. That's all been confirmed by the Washington Post, New York Times, those types of outlets recently. The only reason you start to see that happening is because the Democrats, I think, are realizing that Biden is a massive liability, and they've got to get him out of there before 2024, and ideally maybe even before 2022. But the Democrats have destroyed the economy. Inflation is rampant. Deficits and debt are out of control. And so the Democrats are going to get absolutely wiped out in the midterms, and I can't wait.
Okay. I'm going to throw it now over to Sondsol.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that James has come around to electoralism. Since the last time we talked, he was very, very against electoralism. I'm glad that I was able to convince you, buddy. I agree that inflation and culture war bullshit is probably going to be the deciding issues of the midterms. When we look at the kind of extreme homophobia, extreme transphobia, the allegations of grooming for anybody that's part of the LGBT and is also a teacher, all of these things are the prelude to what we're going to see as we get even closer and closer to the elections. I think that when we look at whether we should go towards electoralism or direct action, electoralism is probably the best course of action, since direct action, nobody wants to, number one, do it, or number two, build up any kind of systems to make sure that they are consistent and productive and efficient with the resources that they're given. Also, just to what Lecture Fan said, who cares if Hunter Biden had business dealings in China and in Russia? Because Trump also had business dealings in China and in Russia, and I don't think that he gave those up after he was elected to the presidency. So it seems like a really weird thing to harp on if you're upset about that.
Wow.
Okay. I'm going to throw it over. Well, okay, guys, remember, intro statements. Wow. Let's follow the rules. Let's throw it over to Taft.
Great. I think that the Republican Party is a complete disaster of a party. And electoralism has historically proven to be not an effective strategy for the right wing when it's not paired with a understanding of direct action. And so the left wing has been extremely effective with direct action. And direct action is a pretty broad term. I think it includes things like the entrance into longstanding institutions, into civil servant positions, into positions in education, and working to grow and create intellectual movements and to prove that policies work in one way or another. I think these are all things the Republicans and people of the right wing can really take note of and follow through with, because, I think it was 2015 to 2017, Republicans controlled so much, right? They controlled the Senate. They controlled the presidency. They would later control the Supreme Court. And, by the fifth grade, civics understanding of checks and balances, they should have been able to radically change, the way things operated. But they didn't, of course. And it's because that fifth grade civil servant fifth grade civics understanding of government is woefully inadequate for modern politics. And I think it begins with direct action, and right-wing people, if they want to have cultural staying power and strength, they need to focus a lot more on actual direct action, actually winning, hearts and minds of American people, and not so much winning the White House for 4 years and doing nothing with it.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to Sprout.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow a lot of the sentiment that Taft has. Republicans have a bad habit of taking the White House and doing nothing. And I think a lot of that is we have rhinos in office. We have people who are Republican in name only that are sitting in Senate, sitting in the Congress, and they're just gonna keep sitting there because they're incumbents, and that's a huge issue. They need to be primaried out, and they need to be replaced with someone who's actually going to be able to do something. And now with that being said, I think moving towards the midterms, I think Democrats are going to lose terribly. You're not going to have all those hate votes you got against Donald Trump. Those are going to go away. Those people aren't going to show up back to the booth. And I think that the biggest things are going to be the economy and the culture war. And that's majorly why I think Democrats are going to lose the midterm. I think the House and the Senate will both turn red come 2023, and look forward to the discussion.
Happy to have you. Throw it over to Vaush.
Yeah, so the issue is like direct action happens on both sides. The problem is that direct action for the right is indistinguishable from electoral action because all of the insane freaks on the Republican Party support all of the insane freaks who are trying to do like non-electoral political engagement. Whether you're talking about Nick Fuentes' Nazi rallies or the QAnon types, like Republican Congress people will show up to these events. Like they are the ties there are very, very strong. Whereas like Democrats, for the most part, don't like there's a much harder separation. I think the Republicans willing to incorporate a more idiosyncratic range of political options into their party because they don't fear populism the way the Democrats do. Speaking of the Democrats, I think they're boned in the midterms. Like the issues don't really matter. Republicans are really dumb. People care about what they're told to care about, and Democrat politicians don't take up any space in the media. They don't talk. Biden doesn't talk. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with Lecture Fan on this. Like, if Biden was actually a real advocate for the Democratic Party, he should be out there nonstop screaming at the Republicans, doing everything he can to get his issues in the mind of the voter. But Republicans are constantly the ones who dominate headlines every single time. Like every time some new culture war issue drops, it's them. Every time some new talking point drops, it's them. Every time
Super male
Republicans dominate
vitality.
the discourse.
You're more than welcome
The
to
only time that wasn't the case
stick
in recent
around.
memory was with
We
Bernie.
can have a conversation
because Bernie
afterwards.
was such like a, I don't know, maverick figure that he was able to sway discourse towards him by being very persistently in favor of stuff like Medicare for all or a higher wage. But Biden ain't Bernie. So in the absence of that media coverage, I think a lot of people are going to be sort of indifferent, and that indifference favors Republicans because people tend to vote for them for much more hardline ideological reasons, like fear of trans people grooming their bathroom bills
I have
or
it written
whatever.
on Rakuten.
I'm sure that's going to come up plenty during the upcoming midterms. Obviously, this isn't real; it's fake, and it affects nobody. But that's what Republicans are going to vote on. It's going to what they're going to talk about, and yeah, I don't know. It's unfortunate.
Well, Vaush, I mean,
Taft.
is
use
it
an
not
intro
open
segment.
discussion? Okay,
No, it isn't. My goodness, Taft.
sorry.
Quick to the trigger, aren't you?
To be fair,
I'm
you started in
eager.
the middle. Which kind of throws people off, but it's okay.
I like to throw people off. That's why I went to Poland. Throwing over to counterpoints.
Fuck electoralism in its stupid fucking ass. Okay. I'm so goddamn sick of spending millions and billions of fucking dollars to elect dickheads who are going to get elected anyways, to get a watered down fucking agenda 30 years after it was fucking relevant. I'm fucking sick of it. And I am so like, okay, if that's the system for electoralism, if that's a system for federalism, if that's a system for the state,
surprising.
okay, cool. I live in a republic. You have to gain consensus in order to achieve shit. I think the Twitch political community would be so much better fucking off taking 5% of its fucking energy in doing shit within their own communities. Literally volunteering, taking the fucking money that you would have fucking spent on us. Please still spend money on us. I need money. But take 5% of the fucking money that you would have spent on us and spend it on fucking direct action shit. And when I say direct action shit, I don't mean Molotov cocktailing a fucking business. I mean, go to your fucking community. You think that schools are fucking dog shit in your area? Go fucking mentor kids on the goddamn weekends. I literally just filled out a volunteer fucking application for my local school system probably about a month ago. If you have problems in your community, fight instead of doom scrolling on Twitter for 8 hours a day, doom scroll on Twitter for 6 hours a day, and then spend 2 hours on productive, real shit. I love this space as much as everybody else. I love fighting. I love blood sports. I love drama. I love science fiction. I love entertainment. I love all of this shit. But if we actually give a fuck about what we're talking about, then I think we would be a lot better off instead of getting these dickhead fucking politicians elected to pass a fucking watered down agenda 30 years too late. We'd be a lot better fractioning off a portion of our energy and actually spending it in our communities and spending it on projects. This will be my last point. On digital infrastructure projects that people have not envisioned before. Discord is a new social media platform that engages people in a way that is unimaginable. We can customize these platforms to serve the dissatisfaction, the disassociation, the alienation, the economic needs of our communities. And the fact that we haven't is a fucking shame. So again, fuck electoralism and its stupid ass. I'm fucking tired of it. We should actually do some real world shit.
Okay. I'm going to now send it over to IRI to end opening statements.
Yeah, so to the question of do we drop electoralism, I just say, like, what's the alternative? Like violent revolution and millions of marginalized people are killed, and then we lord over the other half of the country with authoritarianism for decades. I mean, it's silly. It's LARPing. You might as well be in the woods hitting somebody with a cardboard sword. You know what I mean? It's pointless. So electoralism is the only way to get anything done. And show me, like, Bernie Sanders' version of the current system. Show me AOC's version. Show me Elizabeth Warren's version of the system. And then if we still have problems, then I'm all game for talking about what else we could do. Maybe we could change systems. But let's get there first, and then we can talk. As far as the main issue in the midterms, I agree. I think it's going to be inflation, but I think there's a sneaker topic in there, and that could be abortion. Because at the end of June, early July, the Supreme Court is going to issue a ruling on Mississippi's 15-week ban and possibly completely toss Roe v. Wade. And if there's anything that gets the pussy hat wearing women's marching people excited and galvanized on the left, it's abortion. So don't be surprised if abortion becomes the number one issue as we get closer to the midterms. And finally, the GOP is just going to keep drumming up their stupid little culture war stuff because they have no policy except to tax the poor, as Rick Scott put forward in his 2022 plan, and to revisit wonderful programs like Social Security and Medicare every 5 years. Can you imagine? This is horrific. And finally, they want to try to legalize things like child marriage, which my friend Sprouticus called diversity of thought. So
That is not what I called it.
Opening statement. How dare you? I'm done.
Okay, I'll start us off. So that is not what I called it. I am 100% against child marriages. I'm just going to come out and say that right now. I've said it plenty of times before, and I don't know how many times I need to say it before people start to understand this. I'm 100% against child marriages. I don't know why everyone seems to lump in the Republicans 100% behind what Tennessee is doing. Tennessee is actually changing their laws as we speak to fix the loopholes that were there. But no, Republicans are majorly not against child marriages. I'm going to say majorly because I don't have the exact stats and I don't want to push for them. So no, when I said Republicans, so when I said Republicans have diversity of thought, I was saying that.
Somebody clarify. Wait. Okay, I'm just doing this for the audience's sake. Can somebody clarify, because that wasn't said here, what this interaction was?
It was said on Twitter.
So what exactly did you say on Twitter?
Sprouticus said that there's a diverse
wait. I think Sprouticus can speak for himself.
So I mean, I can read it off specifically. I said, where is it? Yeah, I said, I don't know why people inherently think that because Tennessee voted for child marriages, essentially, that the rest of the parties behind is 100%. There is diversity of thought. And what I meant by diversity of thought, and the common reading of that would be, is that not most or not a lot of Republicans are behind this, and it's centrally located to Tennessee. And I haven't seen any Republican back this up and say, yeah, I'm for Tennessee's law. And so what you're going to see is you're just going to see Tennessee do that. And the idea that all Republicans are behind this is absolutely asinine. And then then to say that I said child marriages is part of Republican base and it's just a diversity of thought and to get over it is a completely disingenuous way to read that tweet.
Well, yeah,
I would
especially
also like to come out and say that I'm also against child marriage, as long as we're all, I don't
Same.
by implication want to be roped in with the.
Well, I mean, especially because it's actually the Republicans that are actually protecting kids from sexual content more so than anything. So if you want to talk about kids and sexual things, it's like every state ought to be passing the anti-grooming bill and the parental rights bill that Florida has just passed. That's the type of stuff.
What is the
That's the type
anti-grooming
of stuff
bill?
that the anti-grooming bill that says teachers can't groom preschoolers.
Where does it
Okay,
say that?
you realize that's already illegal. What is the actual? So the bill just says you
It's
can't.
a-
No,
You
you
can't talk
obviously
about
don't know.
sexual
You
orientation or
actually,
gender
you obviously,
identity.
you
Lecture fam,
obviously
just
don't
asking you
know.
questions.
You obviously don't know what happened in Florida, and that 13 counties in Florida were actually having teachers telling kids to transition their gender and then not telling the parents about that. That's what
There
was
evidence of
happening
that?
in Florida. And so it did need to be passed.
Whoa,
And
wait,
apparently,
hold on.
here's the
Wait,
thing.
wait,
Here's the
wait,
thing.
wait, hold
It
on,
should,
wait,
it's
lecture
for a
fan,
long time.
lecture
It
fan,
hasn't been
lecture
accepted. It
fan,
hasn't been
hold on.
accepted. So we haven't had to pass this bill at all. But
Lecture
the fact
fan,
of the matter is that you
lecture
leftists
fan,
are now all of a
lecture
sudden
fan,
in this state pushing that
lecture fan,
disgusting stuff. And so that's
lecture
why you
fan,
have to
lecture
do
fan,
this.
Why won't you listen to me? Lecture fan.
Why, Vaush, why do you have to interrupt me?
I'm
You scared of me?
asking you.
You scared to
I'm
let me talk? You intimidated?
asking you,
Oh, call me
lecture
dumb.
fan.
Why don't you call me? Oh, you're
You see,
dumb. Hey, you're
this
dumb.
might go on for a while. Okay, so now to be out of curiosity, was what happened the teachers pressured the children to identify as a different gender, or was what actually happened that the children had doubts about their gender identities and the teachers were supportive of it without disclosing it to their parents? Do you know which of those two? Because those are very different, like actually extremely different things.
Yes,
like
I do.
I'll give you
I
an
do.
example.
And I've actually.
Oh,
Yes, I
oh,
do, and I've actually looked into the specific example that led to this, and a mother has given multiple speeches about what happened to her daughter, and
wait,
the
is there
school
evidence, or
started
is it just
pushing.
the word of the mom?
Yes, there's evidence, and these schools had actual policies, and plus we've got all these leftists on
policies?
TikTok with
Wait,
pink hair, literally
what-
bragging about trying to push this radical sex
One-
content on little kids.
One,
It's disgusting.
One at a
It's
time.
grooming.
What policy in the school said that their teachers were allowed to tell their kids that they were a different gender?
There was
So the
literally 13
policy-
counties that had specific policies about that.
What did the policy say?
The policy is
policy
like
said that-
trans affirmation, basically. And part of
That's-
that is
yeah.
that, yeah, and part of that is that you don't share with parents if the child expresses like reservation about it being shared with the parents.
Yeah,
So that's
Which
like
is
the official
disgusting and
policy.
wrong, and,
We've
and
done
it's-
this
that
before.
should be illegal in every state.
We've
I
done
have
this
a
before with-
question.
Well, I just want to finish because it takes forever to get lecture fan to the end point. But we've done this before with sexual identity. So kids who feel like they might be gay, historically in America, have sometimes confided in teachers because their parents are abusive and homophobic. And it's often the policy of those teachers to like not tell the parents for reasons that I think are pretty obvious. So this is definitionally not grooming. It's actually preventing child abuse. So the issue here is with like the semantic retooling of the term grooming here is people like Lecture Fan want to abuse children, and they don't like systems that prevent parents from doing so unilaterally. So in that respect, I am anti-child abuse, and therefore in favor of children having spaces where they can safely express their doubts about their gender identity without being like attacked by their abusive parents. It seems
Yeah.
Okay, so
I mean, like-
with all these being Vaush, I want to push back on you a little bit with that. So with all this being a very popular discourse, I'm sure kids are hearing this at some point in time, and they're starting to hear this, and they're coming up with their own thoughts. Oh, okay, is this me? Is this me? Is this me? So at what age do you think it would be proper for a kid to have enough maturity, enough knowledge, be developed enough to decide that is what they want, without taking drastic action and not letting the parents know?
I don't know. They can just. I'm not sure what action you're referring to. Whatever age the kid is, they can just say whatever, and the parent doesn't have to disclose.
So
I'm not sure what you mean.
kindergarten, a boy can decide that he's a girl. in
So if they're
kindergarten.
like,
Not what the
I-
policy is, though. That's
So-
also not what the
Like,
bill is.
so the
Wait.
policy is K through 3. But
so wait, I
No,
don't
the bill
understand.
doesn't like prevent people from identifying as trans. That's not what the bill says.
it says it
I
can't be
don't-
in the instruction. I understand
Well,
that. But
Yeah,
I
okay, exactly. So like,
I think the bill.
Yeah, can we
I think the
clarify
bill-
that before we continue talking?
Okay,
I personally-
okay, everybody,
like to
shut up.
respond to that.
Everybody, okay, everybody, be quiet for a second. Okay, everybody's talking at the same time, so nobody can hear anything. Okay,
I just
so Vaush, you can respond to Spartacus' question, but I just want to make sure everybody.
I mean, can I finish what I was saying?
Okay,
well, you asked me a question.
Okay, so I think the bill is unconstitutionally vague. But at what age do you think that is?
I mean, if a kindergartner who's like a assigned male at birth, like a boy or whatever, tells a teacher like, I think I'm a girl, like, I don't think the teacher should be obliged to like tell the parents that the kid said that. Like, I don't know what the negative consequences are. Like, all the teacher has to do is go like, all right, like double thumbs, like, yeah, okay, and like go on with their day.
That's
And
okay
support
under the
it-
bill. Sprout, please, God
Okay,
damn
go
it,
ahead.
we need to fucking clarify the fucking bill. Okay, so
ahead.
as far as my understanding of the bill is, it bans instruction. Instruction, meaning, Taft, I would love for you to back me up because you seem to have done a little bit of research. But basically, as far as I know, the teachers cannot create curricula or courses related to like gender identity. I'm sure Taft can basically go over it, but it's K through 3. So if I remember correctly, that is when you're like 8 or 9, which is when you're going to start getting like sex ed if you're on the early side anyways. And then Taftaj, I would love for you to clarify. That way we know what the fuck we're talking about.
so that's absolutely part of it. But there's the other half of the bill. And the other half of the bill is specifically written to address school policy that requires teachers to not disclose information to parents, right? And the risk is like, schools don't want parents to reveal information that is going to put children in potentially abusive situations. So what the bill says, in addition to the clause about instruction, is that teachers must give like medical information if they know it to the parents, as well as information on like instruction and other sort of things like that. So the bill doesn't like really say that you have to like out your child if they're just like, oh, I'm a girl or whatever. But the bill does say, to be fair, that like if the child is like, oh, I'm taking like hormones or something, then you would have to like, you couldn't withhold that information from the parent.
Isn't there
I'm
an
only
exemption for the
arguing
potential
against
for
the use-
abuse though?
I'm only
Isn't there-
arguing against the use
Sorry.
of the term grooming to refer
Mhm.
to not compulsory disclosing any gender-related confusion a child expresses in confidence to a parent.
Yeah.
There's potential for abuse in any social configuration that deals with the relationship between children and like figures of authority. However, given the fact that we've done this before with gay kids, I think the evidence shows pretty clearly that giving kids who are doubtful about their identity, whether it be gay or trans or whatever, like the knowledge that them telling like a teacher won't automatically lead to their like Bible Belt dad beating the shit out of them. That worked before. It was good before. And I think it's good here. I don't think it's grooming. I wasn't even talking about the Don't Say Gay bill. I was just talking about the broader idea that I don't think there's anything harmful about a teacher just being able to go like, all right, well, I respect you. And then like continuing with like the schooling, you know?
That's not what was
Right.
happening.
Well,
though.
one of my personal frustrations is with the right wing and like the inability to like just describe literally what the bill is and like defend it on those grounds. Like, I don't know why we have to like jump to these like accusations about grooming necessarily, because I think it's a legitimate argument to say that like, listen, we shouldn't have like sexual instruction from K through 3. And beyond that, we should be careful with the sexual instruction. And at the very least, we should let parents, like if you're a liberal, progressive parent, and you think it's important for your child to like understand, you know, gay people or trans people or whatever, I think it's your prerogative to like teach your kids and engage with your kids and not expect like the state to come in and do all of those things for you, right? And to be a little bit conservative with like what you tell the state to do. I think that's the legitimate like right-wing position to have here. But I don't know why like right-wingers like need to jump to these grooming accusations.
The problem that we have is that the
Wait,
bill
wait,
is left
okay.
necessarily.
Sonsol's next.
Yeah, the problem with this bill is that it is necessarily incredibly vague as to have a chilling effect on all of the rest of the grade levels, not just K through third, I think it is, right? But anything after that, teachers don't know what they can and what they can't talk about. Like Oscar Wilde is a gay writer. It's something that it was something that influenced his writing and all of his literature. And if a teacher brings that up, they don't know if they're opening up their entire school district to litigation by some like fucking crazy dumb fuck parent that thinks that the fact that Oscar Wilde is gay and that it was mentioned in class is grooming. Okay, that's not even true. Also, there's another thing that I want to say is that when Mr. Sprouticus was talking, he said that like at what age do kids have the knowledge or the wherewithal to be able to talk about these things? Well, like, if they're not ever taught these things, if they're not taught them at home, and they're also like never talked about, that stuff is never talked about at school, then maybe at no age, maybe not until they're already like doing like fucking crazy shit when they're in high school, right?
Okay,
like if they don't have the knowledge,
is fine.
So it's prevalent. So I mean, it's prevalent enough in like news cycles to where it be understandable for a kid to hear about it at some point in time. Now what I am going to ask just now. Wait. I'm literally I'm literally going to define something real quick. So the first half of the bill and the second half of the bill are two very different issues. So the first half of the bill, and I'm just that's the K through 3 part where the no instruction, right? So who, just by raise of hands, who disagrees with the first part of that bill, the K through 3 part of that bill?
I don't even know what it
No
is.
one disagrees.
The
Vaush
problem is the
disagrees with the K through 3.
enforcement mechanism.
Yes.
So I think the
That's
second
exactly
half,
the
I
point.
think the second half is unconstitutionally vague. The first half with K through 3, Vaush, you're the one that raised your hand saying that you disagreed with it. I mean, what exactly do you disagree with about it?
I don't have a problem with young children being taught very basics about sex, gender, and health education, because the data seems to suggest that it prevents them or decreases the likelihood of them being sexually abused, especially at home. If a kid has no idea what is or isn't inappropriate, what language or terminology is used surrounding any of this, they might be abused and not even know it. And that's one of the reasons why there's a pretty strong relationship between these crazy religious fundamentalist cults where there's a fuck ton of child sexual abuse and wanting to protect them from the sins of public education. A lot of it is just because the nanosecond these kids get their like very basic early education, in which the teacher is, if this is even a halfway competent like early sex ed class, is saying like, if anyone's doing any of this shit to you, this is crazy bad, like you got to tell somebody, like if they're being taught that, like kablamo, reports for sexual abuse go up the roof. And as far as I've seen, the evidence suggests that is the case. So for me, it is about preventing child abuse. And you have the added benefit that people that young, even in kindergarten, can have feelings that they might be gay or trans. Does it happen all the time? No. But this stuff is complicated. And maybe if they get the knowledge early on, they're more comfortable with it later in life. It's just not a secret, and I don't think it hurts them to know.
So Vaush, assuming that like assuming someone who's trans is teaching like the first grade, right? It's in the K through 3 area. What would upset that teacher enough that they can't teach about underneath this law? Like they can't provide instruction about?
Well, the Don't Say Gay bill, as I understand it, just prevents all discussion of these topics up until the 3rd grade. Am I mistaken?
It prevents what?
Not discussion, instruction.
It prevents instruction on it.
That
It's an important
vagueness
distinction.
is right for in practical purposes. That is a meaningless distinction. It's not just up to 3rd grade, by the way, because even
That's
past
not
that,
meaningless.
it has to be. Well, I think that's pretty meaningless, especially for something that
Can
doesn't.
I explain
harm
why it's
anyone.
not? Yeah,
Sure.
so the reason why I don't think it's a meaningless distinction is because basically like instruction would be course curricula, bringing stuff up, basically like here, this, that, the other, this is sex, this is gender, this is genitals, all this kind of stuff. And by the way, not all this shit is settled. Okay, I know that progressives like to say that this shit is settled. This is not settled from a conservative standpoint.
What is on?
So
Wait,
just
what is not settled?
Mhm. The explanations of sex and gender and all that kind of shit from a conservative
All you
standpoint.
have to do is say, "Hey, listen, there are males and females, and sometimes people born like this choose to be this, and sometimes people born like this choose to be this, and it's complicated." That's all. You could do that in 15 seconds. Kablamo. Easy lunch.
That in
Okay.
and of itself is abuse,
Cool.
child abuse.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Like,
hold
my
on.
God.
This was
Appreciate your
not
input.
even close to my point. The distinction between instruction and basically talking about it is, let's say that Timmy comes to school and he's like, "Oh, I got 2 moms or whatever." The teacher can go, "Very cool, Timmy." Not, "I'm gonna fucking report you to the fucking conservative gulag for talking about the gays in fucking kindergarten." Like, that's not what's gonna happen.
I think the
Casual
course-
conversation is not what's prohibited.
Sorry, to be more clear, I think that every early education curriculum in America should include a basic discussion of health, gender, and sexuality, because I think it prevents abuse.
At what age?
I don't know. It's just probably first, second, third, sometime during that, like early
There are
on. I got
age-appropriate
rudimentary.
ways to talk
you
about
can
this, yeah.
you can talk about this with kids. Like you can just say, "Hey, this is how babies are." Like you can talk about that with like a second grade.
Okay,
They're not going to die.
50% of the country disagrees with you.
I don't
To be
care
clear,
what they disagree with. They disagree with climate change. That's not.
This is
my interest.
electoralism. This is why.
No, this is the
Wait,
thing.
hold on. Wait, hold
stop,
on.
stop.
Wait,
Let
I got
Vaush
interrupted.
finish his point.
Yeah. So you could respond to any empirical point with, "Well, half the country disagrees." I don't care. I'm advocating for what I think should be the case. And what I think should be the case is an implementation of a curriculum which no data suggests is harmful and data suggests is actually helpful in regards to reducing child abuse. And we know, like anecdotally as well, because there's less data on this, but being exposed to the idea that it's okay to be gay, like trans people exist, really helpful to queer people, like early on in their life, adds a sense of legitimacy to their identities, reduces rates of suicidality, increases confidence. And what's the opposition to this? Like what, their ears will burn out when they hear the birds and the bees? Like no. It's very straightforward to me. I just don't see the issue.
So people don't think
turn
about this.
gay,
People don't
Vaush.
think of this like this. It's in 1948, SCOTUS banned religious groups from using the use of public school facilities because they were saying they were using it as a venue for religious instruction to students. There is already precedent to what we consider instruction and what we don't consider instruction. You can find that with religious ideas in schools. Now that precedent oftentimes comes to this point where so religious instruction is where your child will learn about a particular religion that is not related to a broader education of religious thought, belief, and expression.
I don't understand what this has to do with a very
It's
basic.
precedent to instruction.
Early curriculum.
Instruction versus
For the love of
conversation.
God.
So the
No one will
narrative
be able to provide any evidence that this is harmful to kids because the evidence suggests the exact opposite. This is
Okay,
about
but
protecting children.
Okay, James, you want to go, and I talk a lot, so you go.
I wanted to point out that roughly 40 minutes ago, when I was like, yeah, the only 2 things that are going to sink the Democrats in the upcoming midterms, which was what the question was actually about, is people either focusing on inflation or right wingers throwing up ludicrous buzzwords about the culture wars, like CRT is when black people, or everyone's a groomer and it's all it's all about Republicans just wanting to do things to babies. This is exactly what I was talking about, because it's the easiest way to infect the brain of the people who spend the least amount of time actually reading, learning about, or understanding basic politics.
Okay, and if I can back James up, this is I want to narrativize this for you. We're going to focus in on the subject. Conservatives are going to accuse anybody trying to talk to 8-year-olds about sex stuff as potential pedophiles. Then it's going to cause a furor that, along with inflation, is going to give the GOP enough information or enough fuel to sweep in the midterms. That's exactly what's going to fucking happen.
Disagree.
So we'll see. Well, within the electoral framework, fuck all this bullshit. I would hate to fucking spend like maybe we could have like an interesting conversation about like what's the appropriate age for education, appropriate sex education, and this, that, the other. Those are all cool conversations. But I'm telling you the way that it's going to be used electorally, and I think the energy that we could spend calling each other pedos, we could take 10% of that energy and actually channel it into something more productive and alternative to the existing political structures that demand our attention in culture war subjects.
You think the Republicans would ever do that?
These people are always going to talk culture war
race
stuff.
theory. Yeah, they'll do it no matter what. They call
They'll
Justice
do it.
Jackson a critical race theorist for no reason.
They
do
will-
not need
the-
to-
So fuck electoralism.
Wait,
Right.
stop, everybody. IRI has yet to speak on this topic, and so I want to give it to the C-SPAN loving teddy bear and to the right of me.
All right, well, real quickly, I mean, this is what's going to happen. James nailed it. Like, this appeals to the people with the least amount of information, like Lecture Fan and Sprouticus. So, of course, they're going to hyper focus on this. I wish my teachers would have talked to me about all this sexuality in grade school so that I could be gay or bi, because being straight is boring as hell, man. These guys are having all the fun. So I wish they would. And I wish it would have turned me gay, Lecture Fan. How about them apples? But the point is, people vote with their wallet. It's going to come down to the gas prices. It's going to come down to inflation. And the Federal Reserve has just started to take a shot at that, to bring it down. That's one of their main functions. So if inflation can come down and people are living pretty good lives, I don't think they give a flying shit about some teacher in some random school that doesn't exist teaching sexuality. And if it does exist, it's a localized case. Deal with it. We don't need to sit here as a nation and grapple with this ridiculous problem that's not affecting anybody. It's so dumb.
Didn't Virginia prove wrong exactly what the fuck you just said? Didn't isn't this the entire point that culture issue bullshit, making mountains out of goddamn molehills for electoral wins?
Also,
Wasn't
I mean,
that fucking proven?
History says we lose Virginia. History says we lose Virginia the next year. It was not some sort of blowout amazing feat. And you know what? We should have lost New Jersey too, but we didn't.
People care about what they're.
the Florida bill doesn't.
I interrupted Vaush to go to IRI, so I think it's right to go to Vaush. I'm going to write your name down, Taft.
I only want to say that people care about the issues they're told to care about. Right now, the issue of child grooming, like the threat to children, is predominantly being conducted by Republicans in almost every objective metric. Whether you're talking about like child brides or conservative Christian culture, or like purity, like dates and all that crap, or like their like child beauty pageants, or like there's so much stuff there. This is a preventing child abuse metric. I've just pulled up data on this, and educating people young about this stuff massively. In one study, which was done in 1986, a sexual abuse prevention program targeted at young people doubled the percentage of sexual abuse revelations 1 year later. Literally doubled the number of times they outed pedos in the following year. A ridiculously effective uptick. Next, another study said that after a study were done on people who had taken sexual abuse prevention courses and phoned afterwards, a sample of 2,000 boys and girls, 40% of participants said the knowledge and skills they learned had helped them in specific real-life situations. 25% revealed they'd used the info to help from the programs to help a friend. Child sexual abuse is really tragically common, and the best way to prevent it is to make sure that every child in America is armed with the information necessary to identify when they're being abused. Now, none of this has anything to do with electoralism, because Republicans will make shit up. The problem with Democrats is they're not loud or aggressive enough to take reign of the culture war discourse. And for example, why are we not calling Republicans pedophiles like every nanosecond? Like, they're doing it to trans people, enabling what will be a sort of pogrom against a marginalized group. Meanwhile, Republicans, like Trump was like an Epstein buddy, the Epstein buddy. But do Democrats play naughty with this? Do they get down in the dirt? No, they don't, because they're pussies, they're bitches,
do you actually have these?
Gosh, no, stop.
Or are we just supposed to take your word for it?
Spartacus.
Cringe. Wait,
I need to address what Vaush is saying, because Vaush, I don't know what bill you're talking about at this point, because
I wasn't talking about a bill.
Okay, thank you. As long as we acknowledge that, because the Florida bill doesn't prevent you from talking to a child about sexual abuse, right? Or trying to educate them about what sexual abuse might look like, right? The bill is very specific in that it prevents sexual orientation discussions or gender identity.
It opens
No,
up
it
schools to be
doesn't.
sued by parents if they feel that the schools.
I mean, like if you interpret the bill as meaning like more than what's in the text, right? And your assumption is that
incredibly
like
vague. It's been called vague by legal experts. It's
no,
not like that's
that
not
part
my
is not
interpretation.
vague about like sexual orientation or gender identity. Like
Empowering
the vague part, or what is like
parents to
vague,
sue.
Okay,
is
stop,
really
stop.
the
Okay.
enforcement mechanism.
One at a
Shut
time,
up,
please.
Vaush.
Okay, I mean, I feel like we have to like go back and forth a little bit on this because like I think that like what Vaush is getting at is that like some instruction to children about like what is appropriate or inappropriate sexual conduct is good, right? I mean, hopefully like we can all agree that like
Which is
some
banned in this
baseline.
bill.
No, it's not.
The
Like
bill
read the bill. I can read it to
read
you.
the bill. It
Okay,
specifically
let's read it
banned
out loud right now. Okay.
instruction or
Classroom instruction by
discussion.
school personnel or third parties on what? Sexual orientation or gender identity. That's not like, so you can still talk to them about what is sexually inappropriate conduct, right? You just can't have a
Sex ed is
discussion about
banned until the
sexual
5th grade in
orientation.
Florida.
Right.
Okay.
It's about the second half of it that's like intentionally vague. That part's
Also,
really bad. And I think that you
both.
already agreed with that, Taftaj, right?
Well,
That-
no.
Oh.
To be specific, the problem that I have with the bill is the enforcement mechanism. So I think that like there's a legitimate argument to say that like the scope of what it bans will be greater, but I don't think it's going to be so great that like, you know, it's the point where like you can't say the word gay in a classroom. I think that's also
Right,
like
but
an
that's the
absurd
thing.
exaggeration.
But that's the
so
thing.
I think
People
we have
don't
to be
know what the limits are, and that kind of chilling effect could lead to things being taken out of the curriculum.
This is a
Like
massive violation of our First Amendment rights.
I mean,
And
I
it's
think
like imagine at the
problem-
beginning of the year, an English class, they're getting together and they're like, okay, we can't talk about this author because it's just too much of a liability.
It doesn't even
because
apply to high school. This is a bad
It
example.
says
Wait,
at
hold on,
any
really
age,
quick. Wait, I'm
counterpoints.
sorry.
It says
Wait,
at
there are a
any
lot of
age.
people. Okay, hold on. Wait, please. Everyone's wrong about the bill, okay? Like, this is ridiculous. It bans instruction or discussion about LGBTQ
Not or
issues
discussion, not or
from
discussion, instruction.
classroom discussion and instruction. The bill is kept
No, it doesn't
deliberately.
say
No.
discussion.
The bill
like this,
is
you're
kept-
missing
wait,
the point.
Okay,
You're
listen.
making this up as you go.
Wait, hold on. The way chilling effects work is that by employing deliberately vague language, instruction is not a legally defined term consistently, and rulings on
I guarantee it
discussion
is.
in the context of classrooms have varied in a variety of contexts. There's obviously a lot of ambiguity as to what counts as instruction, because it's
So-
not as though wait, please.
I'm sure
Right.
it's defined.
It's not as
Precedent
though
on instruction.
it's
Stop.
Well,
Okay.
I want to extend an olive
Stop. Wait.
branch to
It's
Vaush.
not
Everybody
as
stop.
though-
No, I don't care. Vaush, finish.
The curriculum as a concept is not like a divine script that can be judged and checked. The curriculum shifts, and oftentimes it comes from what is said in the classroom. What is the difference between curriculum, instruction, and discussion? When you're discussing in the classroom about a topic related to a subject of instruction, is that instruction? Anybody who claims there's a hard line defining what is or is not instruction is simply wrong. And you are free to look up the hundreds.
Do you have
of
to go
legal
get Google
opinions,
right now?
The
No,
hundreds.
I can do it right now. I just did it before. SCOTUS in SCOTUS in 1948.
Can you
banned
hold on.
religious
Wait,
banned religious
hold on.
parties.
Wait, listen. If you want to, you can literally just go and look at the hundreds of legal opinions on this where they impugn the law for its vagueness in both its first and second part. It also doesn't just affect through third graders. It also says that instruction on these subjects must be age appropriate for up through high school students. Tell me if there's a legal definition for age appropriate, by the way.
So
And then
I've
the
already-
second part, which empowers parents to sue the school district at the cost of the school district, is so vague that it deliberately creates a chilling effect on all these subjects. It is a bad law. I wasn't even talking about the law earlier. I was just talking about the right and validity of making sure that kids have a basic education on these subjects. But all the same, oh, by the way, wait. I'm looking right now at CSHB 1557, Florida House of Representatives, line 22, prohibiting classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity.
That's
That's
abstract.
the second part.
It's like
you do
So
realize
I've already
that
said no, Vaush. I've already said that the second part is unconstitutionally vague. I agree with you in the second part.
that's the
but
first
there is,
part.
but there is,
no,
there
Vaush,
is. There,
what you're
so
reading
there
is not the actual text of the bill. It's like a description of it.
There is precedent,
Part of
though.
the bill.
So for you to say there's no legal definition or no legal precedent to
I didn't say there
discussion
was
is
no legal
actually
precedent. I'm
asinine.
saying that the line-
So
I did not say
SCOTUS,
that. I am
SCOTUS,
saying
Let him finish.
SCOTUS banned the religious organization use of public schools March 8th, 1948. And this was to ban third parties from using public school facilities because they said they were using it as a venue for religious instruction to students. Instruction has precedent via SCOTUS.
I never said that the term instruction had never been invoked in legal rulings, only that the definition for instruction is not one with a clear legal definition because it's impossible to define and distinguish from discussions on subjects related to the actual curriculum. And this is clear if you listen to, and I stress you, literally any legal take on this. I'm not making this up. I'm not a lawyer. It's very obviously a bad law, and it's very obviously yet another example of a deliberate attempt to cultivate vagueness as a way of chilling discussion on a subject.
Every
Yeah,
law that includes
I
the
think
word
we
instruction should be banned, right? Because instruction is not a good enough term. So any law that includes the word instruction should be banned as unconstitutionally vague.
Did you wait? Is
Okay,
there another
got it.
person here who
We
shares
can
my voice? Do you have a hearing problem? Where on earth did I say that? What are you talking
You
about?
said that you
okay?
literally
Are you having a
said
stroke?
you literally said
Did I say it? Did
that.
I literally say it, or did you imagine it? Be careful. There are laws.
I mean,
All this is being
I'm just
recorded.
curious because you were given
What are you
the whole
curious
floor
about?
for like 10
Your own
minutes.
medical well-being?
Okay.
Jeez,
You're
just
all
made that
you're
shit
all
up out of
just
nowhere.
And you made up discussion out of
Stop,
nowhere. We can keep going down this road if you want to, Vaush.
Sprouticus, the
I'm gonna
problem
die.
that Vaush has with the bill is the fact that the bill includes a mechanism by which parents can sue schools on the school's dime, on the state's dime, right? And that threat, the worry is that like schools will censor themselves beyond the scope of the bill until there's a legal case to like outline specifically what is and isn't appropriate instruction, right? So
I understand that. I understand that, Taft. But he's also I understand that, but he's also gone against the use of the word instruction plenty
Really
of times.
quick.
You have gone against the use of the
I
word
did.
instruction.
The
You said it's unconstitutionally
Real
vague,
Real quick,
but it's
Sprout,
okay.
and also Top
Sex
Touch.
art is
The problem,
unconstitutionally vague. It's just the term instruction can't be meaningfully differentiated from discussion.
But it can though because the
can
SCOTUS
be.
has
Oh my
precedent
God,
upon
no,
it.
okay.
Stop,
The problem
please.
is that it can't be based off of precedent because this is civil litigation. Okay, so it's not going to be off of any kind of criminal
true.
precedent.
They're
It's all
suing
civil
the school
litigation.
district.
The parents are suing the school district. It's not criminal, so there will not be any kind of precedent that could be set. It will
appeal
always
every case
be.
to the Supreme
Yes,
Court,
it will
bro.
always
Follow
be.
SCOTUS.
Just appeal it to the SCOTUS every time so they can.
You don't think
continue to
lawsuits follow
purchase-
SCOTUS? You don't think lawsuits end up going to SCOTUS? Like lawsuits?
Not
Wait,
like
all
not
of them are
civil
gonna go to
litigation, my
SCOTUS?
dude.
I can't. Okay,
So what I'm
wait.
saying
Okay,
is-
stop, please, everybody, for
Okay.
a second. Okay, so
Uh,
Sondsol, STOP. What does that spell? Thank you. Okay,
I'm so fucking raring to
this is
go,
going off
guys.
the
I'm so
rails
fucking
fast,
raring
and
to go.
I'm losing control of it.
I'm
getting a
losing my
headache,
fucking
so-
mind. I really want to fucking
Exactly, it was
go.
the
Jesus
midterms.
fucking Christ, it's so
So,
fucking stupid.
I want to
Holy
make
fucking
sure
shit.
that when people talk, we have one person talking, and then they can respond. You can go back and forth, but when you start like yelling over each other, and then other people start jumping in, dropping elbows, like I completely lose track of the conversation, and it's impossible for me to moderate because then when I jump in, it's gonna be like, well, you just let the other person just run all over me. Why can't I run over them? And it goes off the rails. And so we're gonna have one person go at a time. Okay, going forward. So Sondsol wanted to talk, and he hasn't talked in a while. So I'm gonna throw it to Sondsol. And if there's anybody else who wants to talk, like counterpoints, we're gonna write their hand down. James, we're gonna write their hand down as well. And Taft and Sprout are gonna be last because they've been talking a decent amount compared to everybody else.
Okay. I just wanted to like point out the fact that everyone's fighting so fucking hard over this is really kind of the whole point of us talking about what is going to be the deciding factor in the midterms. It's so fucking stupid. And it's also a really good argument if you're a left-leaning person for why you should go out and fucking vote and get registered to vote and vote for the Democrats so that we can push back against Republican talking points, because this sort of shit is being pushed by Republicans. I know Counterpoints doesn't like this sort of thing, and you're also against electoralism, which is really surprising to me. But like, even like aside from that, it's really important that we go out and vote. This sort of like crazy bill where everybody does it, like nobody seems to know what the fuck this bill is about. Nobody seems to agree with what this bill is about. The vagueness behind it. I know Toftosh is fucking dying over there, but nobody is agreeing on this panel, and everybody seems to like have looked at this bill in some form or another. Everybody has looked at all the articles. This is just like a weird red herring, weird culture war issue that nobody fucking cares about, and it won't affect anybody's life except for fucking like young people who are like LGBT or, you know, teachers and what they can instruct in on schools and whether they know they can talk about it or not. So yeah, I'm done.
I agree.
Okay. Next, we're going to throw it over to James.
Yeah, no, I surprisingly, I'm going to agree with Sondsol on one thing. I'm going to save my disagreement with him for the closing.
Is the voting?
But to echo Sonsol's point, we're now at 58 minutes of right wingers solely wanting to talk about a grooming bill rather than talking about the question at hand, which is pretty much the entirety of most of their politic and their grasp of electoralism.
Okay. Next, we're going to throw it over to counterpoints.
Okay. So I'm going to articulate boomer perspectives without necessarily agreeing with them. I hope we can differentiate with that. A bunch of fucking people insisting on their ability to talk to 8-year-olds to 4-year-olds about sex and gender identity comes off as fucking weird to normies. Sex education typically happens in middle school or right before middle school. That's when it fucking happens. And the rest of the shit is up to the parents. So it seems like you're trying to undermine parental authority, fucking sneak in some fucking instructive bullshit, and fucking instruct the kids in shit that might be against their religious values. I know that we like to pretend that religion is dying in the United States, and it is. But 60 to 70% of fucking Americans identify as some level of fucking religious, which means that when it comes to this shit, half of the country is fucking against you. Without getting into the specifics of whether or not you're correct about your ideology, or there's a proper way to do it with age-appropriate education, you are fucking yourselves in the electoral system, because we have a whole bunch of fucking giga brain motherfuckers in this room, and we can't agree on shit. So what do you think this turns into? It turns into propaganda and fuel to the fucking masses that people want to fucking tell your kid about, or talk to your kid about their dicks and their pussies when they're fucking 5 years old. That's the propaganda. So you're just falling into it. So
Who's doing that, Connor? Who's doing that?
everybody fucking here.
No, there are no
Everybody
teachers
fucking here. We've
talking
been
to kids
talking about this
stuff.
shit for the past hour.
There's
The
we are, but
conservatives
there's
are
no
the ones-
teachers. This isn't a problem in America. That's the thing. You guys
Yes,
create
there
this
is.
nonsense outrage. No, it's not. Lecture.
Wait,
you
so
have
if it's
kids.
not a problem,
This
okay,
is
okay, hold on. So if it's
Give
not
me
a
a break.
problem, if
It's
it's not a
not.
problem, okay, if it's not a problem, which I agree with you, it's not a problem. If it's a problem, why the fuck are we talking about it? Because it's
Because-
a stupid
because-
bullshit.
Because Florida Governor DeSantis has no other way to get any publicity but to farm outrage. And this is what Republicans do. They have no policy, so all they do is farm outrage. It's so simple.
Who do you think? Who do you think is going to run if Trump doesn't run? Who do you think is going to be the prime contender in the Republican Party?
As of right now, it's Ron DeSantis.
Oh, fucking amazing! It's like my goddamn point that electoralism
But
is a
this
bunch of
doesn't-
fucking bullshit.
Wait,
and
no,
shit.
hold on.
What do you mean by
This isn't
electoralism
electoralism.
then?
Hold on.
Wait. Okay, I can't hear anything. Okay, Jesus.
Connor, this is beneath you. Like, yeah, obviously.
There's
Like,
nothing
Republicans-
beneath me, friend.
Republicans are the ones who are making this an issue. Trans people have always existed. Gay people have always existed. Nothing changed. They just decided to make it a culture war issue. You can't back off of it. You can't concede to them because they'll make up these issues whether or not they actually happen. And what's culture war bullshit to them is real, like, life shit to, like, trans people. Like bills that force medically detransition for trans people in that one state that just passed it literally yesterday. Like, culture war, meaningless win election talking points for Republicans are sometimes life or death for is it Alabama, left-leaning people or marginalized groups or whatever. Like, obviously this shit is stupid and dumb, but like, you can't just roll over and concede and go like, oh, 250 anti-trans bills over the course of 6 months. Like, well, you know, they're gonna do what they're gonna do, right?
No,
Like,
Vaush, this is what you
hold
do.
on, hold on.
You talk
This
about
is-
what they're doing. You don't talk about the substance. You talk about what the hell they're trying to do here, and talk about how they're just farming outrage like idiots. You know?
Okay,
I-
no.
I
But
agree.
this is
Biden should
an
be more
important
out-
part. This is super important. Okay, you made a really good point, which was that to Republicans and conservatives, this doesn't affect them, but to LGBT youth, this absolutely affects them, and you're worried about the chilling effect. Okay, so the question is, can you turn this on its head? Because when you say it's the bullshit talking point, it's all propaganda, it's farming outrage, this, that, the other, basically all people are hearing is, I want to educate your kids on sex at the age below 8, right? That's what they're hearing. So what you need to say instead is kind of like you were saying earlier, sex abuse education can be a great way to prevent abuse. That's a great thing to say. Also, asking the question, when should the nuances of transgenderism, which we don't even agree on as adults, be taught to children? That's the question. For you, these ideas are settled, and you feel like you have all the information on your side. There are at least 2 fucking people who I know you don't like, but who viscerally don't agree with you.
Hold on, wait.
And
First of all,
they're
you don't
50%
determine
of the
school
fucking electorate.
We don't determine school curriculum by whether or not people agree or disagree. We determine it, or at least ideally.
Do we?
No, hold on, stop. You can't simultaneously reject electoralism and then defer all moral questions to whether or not they're popular, okay? When we talk about what is or isn't true, like, I don't know, should we just like cut all like climate change like education in schools because that's disgusting? No, don't be ridiculous. And by the way,
No,
we're
but
not.
you should find counter propaganda that's effective, not one that plays into your enemy's hands.
You're mixing points. If it's counter propaganda that's effective, you know, you go with that if you want. We're not talking about nuances of gender ideology. The statement, there are males and females, and sometimes X identifies as Y and Y as X, that is an objective statement, factually ordained by God. Christ himself would come down, find no flaw. The term identify as is useful in that respect. We don't need to get into the nuances here, but I don't care whether or not people like agree with these things, because Christian conservatives have been trying to wage a war against secular education since the 1950s anyway, earlier than that too. Like, anyone who thinks that this isn't just the next step in a long line of religious fundamentalists trying desperately to desecularize public education, and now that gay and trans people publicly exist, crush them, to silence discussion of them. We've seen bills like this before. None of this is new. The talking points are recycled point for point, word for word, back from the 1980s with gay people, about them being groomers, about sexual education involving
Where is
gay
the
people.
cultural momentum? Where's the cultural momentum? Because I would argue that it is with the left wing, that it is with progressives, that they are doing well, and that these legislative actions, as like the fucking literally saying you can't talk about sex shit until people are 8,
No.
are like the gasping, dying fucking breath of fucking say it. Say it. Say it.
It's not the
It's not
dying breath, it's a
sex shit,
resurgence.
it's sexual orientation too. Like,
Mhm.
this is to be like pedantic. Like, we should be really clear with like what the bill says.
Okay, teachers. Okay, so if
We've
the
been
bill
clear on the
says
contents
you
of the bill.
cannot have instruction about sexual orientation and sexual identity until a child is 8, I'm
And
assuming
no,
60 to
until
70%
grade.
of fucking people agree with that shit.
Till 3rd grade, and also all future discussions on it up to high school must be age appropriate. Again, good luck with that legal definition. And it empowers parents to sue the school district if they find content objectionable. Like, we're
Yes.
focusing on the most specifically, which I still disagree with the most specific bit of the bill, by the way, but we're focusing on that when the broader bill is a legally and philosophically indefensible piece of garbage, which was obviously put in place to form a chilling effect to silence any LGBT discussion.
Based off of the language,
because
based off of the
people
language of the
here-
bill, how many parents do you think are against it? Based off of the language of the bill.
I don't-
I'm not
why
saying
do you
about
keep
intent
deferring
or
ad
subconscious
populatum?
intent.
I don't know how many parents. What do you want me to like bit by bit? I have no idea.
Sure.
I think the reason we're talking about the very specific part
5
is
million.
because the most people here think that the second part of the bill is unconstitutionally vague. So we've narrowed it down to where we're actually disagreeing. We're talking about the part where we're actually disagreeing instead of bringing up the second part where everyone kind of agrees that it's unconstitutionally vague. We're talking about this specific issue right here. When you want to keep pointing up, oh, but the second part is unconstitutionally vague. Yes, we've covered that. We've covered that over and over again, Vaush. That's why we're narrowed it down to the specifics of the bill.
Sprout,
the
that's
Yeah,
not
I
even-
agree.
not
The
even
bill is
close
like
to my
the
point.
bill can be critiqued for good
wait.
reasons.
Okay, here's a question in the room. Does anybody think that these bills are going to be the deciding factor in the midterms? Raise your hand if you do.
If we're
One-
still talking about them in a year,
Maybe.
yes.
I think
yeah,
Republicans
we're
making
talking about
this
it
an
in a year.
6
issue
months.
is going to be. Yeah, I think Republicans making an
months.
issue out of it is the problem here. It doesn't matter what the bill actually does or doesn't do.
Yeah.
Their LGBT bills, like in general LGBT legislation.
Anti-LGBT legislation, but yes, there's the broader
Yes.
hatred they have of it's the trans culture war. They're all groomers, pedos, blah blah blah,
Which-
whatever they're gonna say.
Talking points that
Yes.
you would have heard in the 80s have suddenly become mainstream that you see
Yeah, like
all
in
the
an
time on
instant,
fucking
like
80s. It
in
was
like
so fucking
2
crazy, right?
months.
Just like fucking out of nowhere. I've not heard this shit
Nothing
out of
happened.
anybody.
Nothing
It was
changed.
just fucking.
And then instantly, yeah. Like just all of a sudden, like now it's the biggest issue in America. It's like critical race theory. It's this theory from the 1990s that like exists exclusively in Harvard Law, and like one guy wrote a book. And then instantly, it's the greatest problem that it's gonna fucking destroy America. And then 2 months later, it's done. Like this is so obviously made up, but it's gonna get people killed. Like at this point, Republican politicians and like big signal boosters are like tweeting shit like all these people are groomers, they're all pedos. Well, what do people do when they think large groups of people are groomers and pedos? There are going to be mass shootings. There's going to be widespread systemic discrimination. All of this, real people, real blood, real sweat, real tears over a cynical attempt at winning a midterm election because Republicans offer nothing to the American people for real. And ultimately, you know what? They're going to win. It's going to work because Democrats are that bad at focusing on the actual things they could do to win the midterms, or in fact, any election. They are utterly incapable of leading. It is an embarrassment. It is a disgrace. But I mean, still, at least through abstemiousness, they are better than Republicans, better than to be incompetent at doing good, than effective at doing evil.
Okay, can I ask counterpoints? You keep on like agreeing with the points about electoralism, but you also say you're against electoralism. What does electoralism mean to you? Like going and voting? Are you against going and voting, or are you just against like the concept of democracy broadly? Now I don't know what, because you keep on agreeing with the kinds of things that we're saying. But yeah,
I like republicanism, and I'm okay with the slow churn of the electoral system. That being said, it's slow, intentionally so, and it was borderline designed to address problems in a very slow way because they didn't want drastic changes to the country all the time. Okay? So I am okay with you as an individual showing up to your local election, voting in your local election for things that definitely affect you, and also voting whatever way you think is most morally just at the federal level. But I think that because of the intentionally slow nature of our electoral politics, we shouldn't be waiting on these people like saviors, and a significant amount of energy that we are spending on Bernie's the best ever, I'm going to fucking blow him behind the fucking, the Wendy's or some shit, could be spent on fucking, like, I don't know, going out into your community and actually doing some shit, taking a little bit of your fucking money, a little bit of energy, a little bit of your talent, a little bit of your fucking skills, and using that instead of supporting some fucking candidate to actually support your local community. And I'll give you an example. Most people I talk to who have worked in electoral systems, they're bitterly fucking disappointed with the electoral system. They fall in love with a fucking cult of personality. They love John Ossoff or Biden or Harris or fucking somebody, Bernie, in a fucking thing. They go into the campaign, they're all idealistic. They realize that it's all a giant fucking circle jerk and they're not going to get half the shit they fucking want. They become disillusioned and they basically bow out of politics. That's most people who participate in electoralism. So I think instead of setting people up for failure, hey, yeah, go participate in the giant monetary circle jerk that is electoral politics. Keep some of your fucking money. Go vote in this shitty election every fucking 2 to 4 years, and then fucking spend your money and your energy on your own community. That's what I would tell young people at this point.
I mean, earlier in this discussion, Vaush brought up QAnon. And I think it's a great example of like the failure of Republicans to focus on direct action and an insistence on like electoralism and, talking points that win elections but don't do anything. I read a study recently that something like 16% of Americans believe in QAnon. And in not just like, do you believe in QAnon, but do you believe in like, the government is controlled by pedophile Democrats? That's absurd, right? And it's like a massive failure on the part of Republicans to like control messaging and to control the ideology. They've allowed.
Do I
this
have to
conspiracy
defend
theory.
QAnoners now? Do I have to defend them now? Okay,
Do you want to
guess
do
what?
that
Our
later on?
our government is run by fucking pedophiles or ephebophiles if you're a libertarian, okay? Basically, shitloads of fucking people were caught fucking hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, but you know what the big secret is? It's Republicans too. That's the fucking secret. Is that fucking dozens, hundreds of very powerful people were hanging out with a fucking billionaire who had underage prostitutes, and a decent chunk of them were probably fucking honeypotted, and this was fucking leverage against the United States of fucking America. Toft, you're covering your fucking mouth. I don't know why you don't think that's real. It's
No,
fucking
I do
real.
believe that's real, but like the actual survey that I was looking at, it has like more than that, right? So it's not just like, do you
fucking
believe
lizard people and Hillary
Yeah,
Clinton.
But see, like, don't you
and
see,
all
like,
that
like the
shit.
way that you're
It's
talking
like-
right now is like the direct action that Republicans will do is like mass shootings and shit because they think that everybody is a fucking pedophile on the other side. And the
What?
fact that they all talk
No.
about how like LGBT people are fucking groomers and shit is going to lead to violence against them. Like, does it not like register with you that that could be like an outcome of this?
So my problem
and
is that like Republicans are allowing this like ideology that like JFK Jr. is going to come back and save people to like spread within their ranks
want
because
that,
like
though.
it just like incites things and incites people to like vote or whatever. But like it's a complete losing issue to allow people to believe in like insane shit. And you have to like control your movement and actually like make sure that you're advocating for things that are true and not just things that are going to win you temporary points. And I think that's what Republicans do over and over is they like advocate for things that are winning temporary points but are fucking insane. And I think that's like the really big problem
If it
here.
works for him, I mean, you know,
What's
what-
that?
does it hate the play? Don't hate the player, hate the game. I mean, clearly,
Hold on. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, that's been their modus operandi for ages. Like, Republicans do nothing good for the country. They haven't, at least since I mean, just consistently. Like, it's just worse. Like, everything they do is fucking dumb. So they distract people by focusing on adjacent culture war issues.
Okay, I think James, if you want to talk, but I think I have decent counter
I just got one
propaganda that
quick
would
point
actually
to make.
work
I
in
got one quick-
conservative circles.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to bring some clarity to Taft's fact there. Roughly 16% of Americans believed in QAnon. Roughly 16% of Americans are evangelical Christian. Your mystery has been solved.
All right.
Okay.
So
gonna-
you know what?
Counter.
Can I present some decent counter propaganda? Okay, so I think that decent counter propaganda is not every single conservative wants to fucking execute trans people in the streets. I don't think that fucking does anything except for escalate tensions. I think saying like, hey, listen, you're passing this bill and it's actually preventing discussion on sex-related issues that potentially prevents abuse. Here's this fucking study that I just cited in order to fucking basically, I think there is age-appropriate ways to discuss these ideas. And on top of that, here's an example that actually prevents pedophilia, doesn't encourage it. And oh, hey, the gender and sex stuff isn't completely settled, but from a liberal or libertarian American respect for individual
listen
rights
this
kind
long.
of thing. No.
They're already screaming and
See,
shitting.
this
They're
is
not gonna
bullshit. No. Vaush, this is the reason why this is fucking bullshit is because I'm that guy. Okay? I'm that guy. Plenty of fucking people were that guy.
With respect,
Sure.
there's
Mhm.
all evidence of political engagement in this country would seem to point to the idea that, for the most part, Republicans are fucking immune to logic. I swear to God, you cannot convince me in a country where Republicans don't believe in climate change that well-reasoned arguments are going to change their mind, okay? I'm sorry, this comes down to political power and not much else. I want Biden screaming like a monkey up there about how every single Republican is a pedophile because they support bills that would allow it easier for children to be abused. I want him to do this for 6 hours every day because at the end of the day, his shit-flinging is going to save people's lives and Republican shit-flinging is going to end people's lives. If that's how the game has to operate these days, then like the idea that we can sit down and have a conversation with the QAnon party that's still divided on whether or not Trump was right to do fucking the insurrection, like past the point, like you have to sit down past the point and go like, all right, you can't logic a person out of a position that didn't.
Listen, this is one of the
Yeah,
most
the
important
QAnon
fucking
people
things.
need to be
Tough.
excised from the right.
No.
Yes.
No, this is
the
the
whole
most
ideology
fundamental.
is
No. Fuck this. This is the
horrible.
most important shit that we've been talking about all
You need to be
fucking night.
strong.
Okay. No. Well, yes. Okay. So the fucking way that you talk to these fucking people is you can see the material reality that is obvious. So for instance, when you say QAnon fucking people are a bunch of like subhuman dumb fucks, which is true by the way, and that they don't fucking know what the fuck they're talking about, which is true by the way, then you fucking follow up with like, hey bro, that is the shit that, you're fucking right about something, but overall you're fucking wrong. And then you explain to the fact, because you actually researched and read shit, that there probably was a honeypot operation with Jeffrey Epstein that does implicate Republicans and Democrats, that there are fucking people in power who are having sex with underage prostitutes. So the truth, the fucking foundational part is true, but now you're talking about fucking lizard people? Bro, you've lost your fucking shit. No, Vaush, hold on. The thing about this is, you're talking about like you have to win them all. You don't have to win them all. You have to break off enough of them that the fucking people who are insane are irrelevant. And so, by the way, like if I took a fucking polling on Twitter right now for fucking authoritarian leftists or fucking leftists who supported fucking Russia or are isolationist, what percentages do you think I'm going to get? What kind of fucking political support do you think I'm going to get? Do you think it's going to be between 5 and 15%? Do you think that between 5 and 15% of your side is a bunch of fucking pieces of shit? Because I fucking guarantee you they are. As a matter of fact, you fight with them all the fucking time.
The entire Republican Party, though, like the Twitter left is the Twitter left. We're talking about the actual Republican Party in the United States, one of the most powerful political institutions.
So do you want it to boil down to power politics?
Both sides have power.
Wait, stop. Okay, counterpoints, finish this line of logic. We'll have Vaush respond.
Okay.
Then we'll throw it over to Sondsol. I'll write your name down, Sondsol.
Writing off this segment of the population, ignoring the propaganda that's doing it, and then on top of that, having shitty counter propaganda that fuels the fucking problem even worse, concedes the entire Republican Party to reactionaries, to fascists, to authoritarians. So basically what you're doing is you're creating you're making the problem fucking worse instead of better. If you want to moderate them, then you bring them over with arguments and emotional appeals that they understand.
Okay, this is very much, with respect, a touch grass argument that I'm telling you. This works for online engagement, like behind the mic. When you're dealing with political engagement for an entire country, the idea that you can reach out and like rationalize to people on this is not supported by virtually any conspiracy-oriented talking point, because that's not how conspiracy theories work. The Republican Party is at this point broadly conspiratorial. That is, after all, the whole like stolen election thing with Donald Trump, stop the steal. That was a conspiracy theory that they have bought into wholeheartedly. Logic has not worked. Arguments do not work. What you need is power and exposure. Now, that's not about writing them off, okay? I still think these people are humans who can be reached, but you don't reach these people by trying to appeal to their sensibilities, because sensibility is not what got them to where they are now, what they believe now. What you do is you dominate the counter narrative, okay? What you do is you loudly and hegemonically promote the correct beliefs to the point where they get shamed socially for not agreeing with them. We did this with gay marriage, and it worked pretty well. We're having a bit of a blowback right now.
Fuck no.
Wait. If you want to look at literally any form of social acceptance pertaining to progressivism, you will find a strong positive correlation between laws or strong political bodies advocating for those groups and a support rising. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was unpopular when he died. Something like 2/3 of America didn't like him. But after you get a couple of years, a couple of decades after Jim Crow ends, well, look at that. Now, all of a sudden, it becomes socially unacceptable enough to dislike him that you get people falling in line. Likewise, with regards to like the arguments for it, the arguments for the equality of the black man have been around for centuries. What did that do to change the mind of the slaver, or of the anti-abolitionist, or of the pro-Jim Crow advocate? Nothing, because they didn't get where they are through logic, not through a rational assessment of the positions at hand or of the actual scientific nature of race. Of course not. They were taught by their dumb fuck fathers that black people were bad, and they believe it, and they're going to teach their kids that, until all the other kids at school shame the shit out of that kid for opening up with the N-word. All right. At the end of the day, the arguments are important. The sentiment, the care, all of these things are important. But to pretend that the reason we're like QAnon grows is because we're not fronting the best arguments with them is to tragically miss the point.
Yeah, we have to control more than that. We have to control institutions. We can't like allow these conspiracies to grow. You have to like fundamentally restructure your approach.
I'm gonna fucking lose it. Okay, no. Fucking no to everything you just fucking said. The reason why people fought and die. Like, need I fucking remind leftists, okay? I know that you forget that there were fucking white people in the goddamn Civil War who fought for fucking abolition. But
Right.
the reason why that was fucking done was along appeals to liberalism and common humanity. The reason why gay people have been broadly accepted through society was through liberal and libertarian appeals to tolerance, not through like broad hegemonic acceptance. Basically, the reason why gay marriage was passively allowed by fucking conservatives was because they basically said, hey, gays, they're human beings. They're just like you. They like to do a little bit of drugs, and maybe they like to fuck a little bit. Don't you like to fuck a little bit? They're human beings just like you. And so you have an entire millennial and Zoomer generation that literally doesn't give a fuck about gay people because they're just human beings just like everybody else. And to say that, yes, you have to take like our perspective on transness and fucking shove it down culture's throats. That's how you get people like Lecture Fan by the fucking way.
Now,
Is you're taking your ideology and you're shoving it down their fucking throats.
Wait, you're unironically doing the shoving trans ideology down their throats when the Republicans are the one passing hundreds of laws and we've done nothing and nothing changed on our end?
Hold on, Vaush. Wait, really quick. It was supposed to be my turn after Vaush. Okay, I want to disagree with you, Vaush. Okay, just a little bit. Let's not pretend like the left doesn't have some kind of power. The right has a lot of electoral power, especially at the state level, where they can put a lot of anti-trans bills out there. But to say that the left doesn't have social power when it comes to like, you know, online spaces or, you know, like corporate power where they can basically like if someone says something that is slightly like even
Hollywood.
if it's like a little I mean Hollywood
Media.
whatever. If when we look
Hollywood.
at the kind of social power that the left has, right? They can get someone's like sponsors taken away. They can get someone's like
I'm
life
not
ruined,
saying-
right? But
Wait,
like this
hold
is
on. I'm not saying. Wait, hold on. All I was saying was that I think it's dumb to compare QAnon, a tens of millions of people strong, supported by the Republicans in power political organization that, if they take charge, which they have every possibility of doing, would be the most politically powerful group in the history of the planet, with Twitter lefties who supported Russia. Now, are there leftists broadly in the world who are kind of hegemonically in line with Russia? Yes, we call
hold
them
on. We're not.
fascists.
I'm not talking anything about like the Twitter lefties that are talking about Russia. I'm talking about like domestic issues, my dude. Like
I never said the left doesn't have power at any. I never said that.
You were
I didn't
trying
even
to.
play it.
The implication was that the conservatives have all of the electoral power and that they're pushing forward all of these anti-trans bills and all these
I
anti-gay
didn't
bills,
say that.
which I
They're
agree.
only doing it in their states. They can only do it in red states. It's only blue states are immune to this. They can't do it federally. Even if they reverse Roe v. Wade, like it's still going
How
to
does
be like
that?
a state
How does that
retreat.
address what I'm saying whatsoever?
Because-
I said at the
because
state
how
level,
does what you're
Republicans
saying address,
have.
I've never said the left doesn't have power.
The implication behind what you were saying was that how are we going? I mean, actually, wait. You explicitly said how are we equating like online like trans lefties to Republicans who are passing
It was
anti-trans bills?
specifically pro-Russia lefties. That was the specific group that I was referring to, and I don't think pro-Russian lefties have any hold in real political power in America.
But the social
just
power
wanna-
is like
I
pretty
wanna-
significant in this because if we're going to say like Connor was saying, like if we're going to try and like shove our ideology down their throat, whether like you
Not
want to call
shoving
it,
our
like, well, some people
trans
are.
people
Like,
exist.
You
some
are.
people,
Can I
some
explain
people
that?
are.
Well,
But like
okay,
because
wait,
some of these things are still under debate.
Connor.
Some of these things are like explicitly like gender theory stuff that is not anything
The
that is in
idea
the
that
realm
trans
of.
people exist is empirically correct. Nobody's talking about
So
complex gender
okay, wait.
theory.
You
Can
know
I
what? I agree with
explain
you. Wait, I agree with you, Vaush. No one is when they make these bills, they're explicitly going against trans people. But the online conversations around like the like really esoteric conceptions of gender are what spur those things into reality. You know?
Wait, people online are always going to talk about whatever. I don't.
It doesn't have to do with the point.
If progressives and marginalized groups are to be held to account for the interpretations that take place of all the discourse online, then they're well and truly
It's not the
dead, but-
interpretations. It's the like social enforcement of
So people
their
online are pro. Wait, I don't understand what point is being made right here. The only instruction that I referred to was the acknowledgement that trans people exist to young people in like kindergarten or first grade or whatever. But that is an objectively correct statement.
So
in
maybe
terms of
the-
broader gender theory, like you maybe like in high school, like I don't
no,
know.
no.
That's like
Maybe
more
the
complex.
disconnect here is that it seems like Connor is talking about the way that things are talked about socially are pushing people into like pretty extreme positions to where they will attack LGBT people through
That's
legislation
such a
in real life.
bullshit excuse, though. They've said that every time. Every time the right does some crazy race gender war shit, it's because they've been pushed into it. I don't care. Literally, the literal Nazis said that. Like, they say this every time. Like, oh, we were fine,
Oh
but
my
then
God!
you're
I'm
woke.
asking you. No, hold on. Fuck this. Everybody's been talking about my
stop.
fucking perspective, and I
This
haven't been able to
narrative-
articulate it. This is my perspective.
This narrative that these massive waves of conservative legislation that have nothing to do with reality and don't help anyone are somehow a product of like the progressives or the woke left or whatever going too far has been the excuse used literally every time. Always. It goes all the way back to the abolition of slavery. Every time
I
there's a
agree with your
pullback.
point. Can I address it?
Okay, I just don't think
And
it's an
then we're moving
effective
on to the
narrative.
last topic because I want to talk about insulin.
Dylan, please, for the love of God, they were
Oh,
talking about my
yeah.
perspective for 5 fucking minutes. Can I address? Can I
Counter.
say
Did
my
you hear what I
I
just
cede
said?
my time till the
Counter.
closing.
Counter. Okay, 1 second. This is working? Okay. Counter. I said you can go, and then after we're going to talk about the price of insulin because it's the last topic.
Okay. So
Okay.
all I heard was we're going to move on to the next topic. So, okay. So the point about this is you're saying that like the way to go is by being empirically correct and using our correctness in order to narrativize this and push it upon people. And whether or not I don't even give a shit if you agree with the term. It's what's happening. There is a more progressive perspective on gender that is different than the perspective on gender and sex that existed 10 or 20 years ago. And regardless of whether or not you think it's correct, it is being hegemonically enforced through culture. Okay? This is just a descriptive. I'm not saying whether or not it's good or bad. I'm just saying that it's happening. Hold on. No, fuck that.
What
I'm
though?
talking.
That
1
trans
second.
people exist?
No,
Well, I
Vaush,
just want to know
Vaush.
what
Yeah. Okay. What I would say is that in order to be effective with your counter propaganda, rather than saying, fuck you, you're wrong, we're right, flying spaghetti monster, evangelical Christianity is fucking cringe, go eat a bag of dicks, you chud stupid fucks, I would say that exact attitude is responsible for fueling of reactionary tendencies on the right. And if you wanted to temper them and have them actually consider the humanity of their opponents, then you should appeal along liberal lines. And when you're talking about the great revolutions,
not liberals.
fuck no, I'm still fucking talking. Yeah, sure, okay. Then you should see yourself as a cohesive whole. Okay? You're the fucking progressive lunatic who's going to come on with a fucking hard goddamn perspective, and you're going to tell motherfuckers how it is, and here's all the empirical evidence, and anybody who doesn't like me is a fucking chud piece of shit. And then fucking conservatives are going to say, fuck you, you're wrong, God said a different fucking thing, you're a piece of shit, and I hope you burn in hell and die. And then there's liberals or fucking centrists who have to try to get the two sides to fucking talk in a way in which we can live in the same society without fucking killing each other. What I don't like about your narrative fucking structure is I think that while it might be socially fucking necessary, if you were left to your own devices, you would literally create a society so fucking divided that literally it's going to start a shooting war. That's the fucking way I feel about leftists, and that's the way I feel about fucking chud fucking conservative dumb fucks.
Okay, can I respond to this? First of all,
Sure,
it's
we gotta wrap it up.
I know,
because we've been
it's
going on this
disgusting
way
of
too
you.
long.
It's disgusting of you to equate like the radicalism of people fighting for the right to exist and the radicalism of people fighting to deny others the right to exist. Like the chud.
Do you think that most
Stop,
conservatives are
stop.
trying to deny people's
Now,
right to exist?
Hold on. He just said shooting war. Okay, so this is a war in your hypothetical between people defending the right to exist themselves and people trying to deny others their right to exist. This has happened.
I think it's more
before.
going to be the communism that starts it.
Honor.
But yeah.
There's no communism in the US, okay? In the room with us, no. Connor, we've done this before in the 1980s where the Reagan admin allowed hundreds of thousands of gay people to die deliberately by telling the CDC to not do proper research. We've done this during the Civil Rights Movement where MLK died a martyr and reviled by the majority of Americans. We did this during the slave days. The idea that appealing to the humanity, like, oh, the South, hey, maybe you should consider that black people are humans. What happened? Oh, the Civil War. Hey, what happened during the Civil Rights Act? Like, oh, we should consider black people are humans. That is good and it worked. But if you take a look at like percentages of people who like felt positively and progressively about black people, that shit skyrocketed after the Civil Rights Bill, not during the protests, because the arguments are less important than the social normalization. People with these positions, like anti-trans, don't arrive at them logically. It's through fear and disgust, and you can't rationalize people out of those reliably. Sometimes you can. It's not impossible, and I try
Vaush.
to on my platform, but you can't do it consistently. And what you need to do politically is understand that these phony deferences to liberal civility are nothing more than a weapon that the right uses to silence and weaken progressive groups. They have been wrong every time. Every
So
time.
will
it has
you
been
just
through
admit that you're pushing your
loud-
agenda then?
No, don't even.
Yes, but in
Bitch,
wait,
even.
There you
But
fucking
wait,
go.
I don't
That was
care.
the
Wait,
entire
I don't,
goddamn
like,
point.
I
Connor,
don't care.
Connor.
Whatever either you were
Every-
going to say at this point, I just don't care, and I don't think
every
anyone
group
else does. And I have,
pushes.
and I don't care anymore.
Wait,
I
me
don't
or
care.
him?
Everyone. We're moving on to the next topic. This
Are
is
we
going
taking
on for way too long.
conclusions?
We're gonna do Taft. Your tears are like sweet nectar to me. Unbelievably sweet nectar. Okay.
Do
We
closing
have
statements
less-
like a minute.
It's okay.
It is-
I'd love
to
to
be
talk
clear,
about insulin.
It is 4:30 a.m. and we still have a whole topic to go where I am. We are moving on to the next topic. Okay. So we're going to do 30-second outros. You got to be as quick as possible with anything left you have to say. Okay. We're going to start with counter and we're going to go around the room so everybody at least gets an ending statement. I don't know if Lecture Fan dipped or his internet broke. I don't know. I'm reaching out to him. I wanted to hear his perspective on capping insulin prices. That was exciting content for me. Counter.
Electoralism, vote, like go ahead and vote, but electoralism is fucking cringe. We should be doing our shit fucking separate. And if you're going to push a certain agenda, even if you think your agenda is correct, if I say you're pushing a certain agenda, don't go, no, I'm not pushing an agenda. Just fucking admit it. You're right.
But I
You
did
have a
admit it.
correct agenda and you're pushing it.
But I-
Okay.
I said
There's
yes,
different
though.
social this is my outro. There are different social forces who have different roles in a stable society. I am trying to serve my social role of taking your arguments and giving them back to people who fucking hate you so they don't kill you. That's my fucking job.
So I want to thank President Zelensky for gifting me my 100 gifted tier 1 subs as an anonymous gifter. I know he told me he didn't want me to give him credit, but it was actually President Zelensky. There's the ghost of Kiev. I am the shill of Kiev, and I appreciate the 100 tier 1 subs. I'd be a lot more excited if I was not as tired as I am. So now I'm going to throw it over to Vaush since Vaush wants to respond and the cat is harassing him.
I have never been shy about the fact that I push my agenda. The term shove your views down people's throat implies some kind of harm or impunation done to them. Everyone pushes their agenda. I would never be shy about that. Look, this argument that people are shoving their beliefs down your throat could be applied and has been applied to literally every civil rights struggle in history. It's boring and it's uninteresting. Liberation theory has moved past this. The idea that appealing to the civility of the people who fucking despise you and think you're subhuman is going to bring about effective positive change is just not true. You have to wield political power effectively. That's the most effective way you can do things. You don't have to abandon good arguments or start dehumanizing your opponents to do that. It's not mutually exclusive to any effective other things that you want to do.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Taft.
Right. I think Vaush is mostly right. And a good example of this is representation in media. So gay people got more representation in media, and we saw that had a huge positive effect in the way that gay people were perceived. And we saw that get translated into political momentum. That's because left-wing people were able to they were able to take control of like some part of media apparatus. And if you want to change ideas, you got to be involved in institutions, and you've got to work in that direct action. And I think Vaush is mostly right. You don't do these things through logic; you do things through taking over institutions.
Okay. Sondsol?
Yeah, so I feel like we super lost the plot on the topic of electoralism. But I think that ultimately it does come down to trying to convince the other side of what your position is, and not trying to say that your position is correct and then just like attacking the other side. I think that I understand what Connor is saying when it comes to getting people to, the civility politics that Vaush was talking about, where you're actually trying to explain your point of view and not shove it down their throat. But I do think that can be used as a weapon. There's some point that you can find in the middle there that is reasonable, but I don't think that we were able to find it given the constraints of our time. But yeah, electoralism is good.
Okay, I'm going to throw this over now to James.
The overwhelming majority of electoralism is trash. Please vote at the county level for judges and sheriffs, who are the ones who enact kicking people out of their homes. For the record, the Democrats are going to lose 32 seats in Congress, 4 seats in the Senate, and 3 gubernatorial seats. Feel free to clip that and holler back at me at the end of the year. And the reason we didn't get to talk about electoralism is because the conservatives wanted to suck all the oxygen out of the room and spend 50 minutes talking about pedos, children, and vaginas.
Sprout.
I think that politicians should be honest on what they're going to do and what they plan on doing, and then actually push for it when they get in. I think that we need to stop all of this false flag, where essentially I'm going to push for this, and then they don't do shit about it once they get elected. And I think the answer to that is to kick them out of office. And so with the midterms coming up, whether you're red, blue, Democrat, Republican, I don't give a shit. Make sure you go vote and research your candidates prior to voting. And for the love of God, do not vote a straight ticket.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to IRI.
Yeah, so I think electoralism is based. I look forward to seeing what happens in the midterms. Now, I just want to say quickly, Vaush, I'm not saying ignore the culture war, but I think you could just push back on the nonsense, but not spend a lot of time. For example, fund the police, secure the border. Those are things we stand for on the left. So we just have to mention that once in a while. But it doesn't get our base out to tell the left that Republicans are pedos and look at all this crazy crap they're doing. It just doesn't get our base fired up. The reason why we didn't do as well as we wanted to do in 2021 and even in 2020 down ticket is because Biden's approval ratings are low. You know what I mean? And that's because the pandemic's still here, but that's in the rearview mirror. Inflation is here. Gas prices are high. These are things that are not going to be like that forever. So I think you can push back on the culture war stuff a little bit, but we have a solid platform and we just got to go out there and talk about it. Things like capping insulin, which we'll talk about in a moment, 2 more years of pre-K, on and on. And I still stick to my last point that the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade is going to get all the radical liberals like me out there to skip brunch and our avocado toast and go knock on doors and vote. So I'm not even worried about any of this stuff.
Wonderful. Now, I just wanted to throw out to chat that I appreciate everybody watching. As many of you know, I'm currently in Poland. I'm trying to interview locals in Poland. I'm interviewing Ukrainian refugees. And I'm trying to possibly also go to Hungary because CPAC is actually going to be in Hungary. And Viktor Orban is going to be a guest speaker. So I'd love to go down there and just talk to people because why? I repeat, why? Anyway, any support to the channel, to support the Hippy Dippy Roundtable, which takes time to produce, time to manage, and of course, so I can do more projects like this in the future, would be greatly appreciated. Thank you to the anonymous gifter and everybody else who's supporting the channel. We're now going to go into the last topic of the night, which I'm very excited for because it's actually a little bit more of a nuanced policy conversation, and it has to do with capping the price of insulin. The Republican Party, largely in the House, voted against the legislation that would cap the price of insulin, 197 votes against. And so I wanted to get the room's view on capping the price of insulin. Are you supportive or are you against it? Is there a more nuanced take you would like to give? I'm going to start with Sprout. And Reboot, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1s.
Yeah, we should totally cap the price of insulin. The price of insulin has soaringly gone up, much like the EpiPen did. And we should totally cap the price of insulin. I think Matt Gaetz is the person who said that the price of insulin goes up as the waistline does, which is absolutely abhorrent speech by Matt Gaetz. And because there are people such known as type 1 diabetes, and I believe I'm saying that right. It could be type 2, but I believe it's type 1 diabetes where it's genetic. You have it as a kid. And those are the people who are actually insulin dependent. Type 2 diabetes, the diabetes you get later on in life or because of poor health choices, they're actually not insulin dependent. And there's other ways they can control their diabetes. And so capping the price of insulin would just majorly affect type 1 and not type 2.
Okay. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Vaush.
Yeah, I'm sure there are nuances to the production supply chain stuff for insulin that I'm not fully aware of, but it's just another one of those situations where we're the most powerful country on earth, and for some reason the price gone up significantly in the past couple of years, and also other countries pay less. And people are always going to be there to explain, well, according to this chart and these numbers, actually this is why you need to die. But no, I don't think so. Yeah, cap it harder, cap it more than we should. I would rather over cap than under cap. I'm a big capper here.
That's a lot of cap. Gonna throw it over to Taft.
No cap.
Yeah, capping insulin is a bad policy. It's, taking a hammer to something that doesn't need it. If you want to reduce the price of insulin, that are better policies. For example, price reference policies or government negotiation are two policies which will reduce price, but in a better way. The reason why you want to not cap insulin is because there's a lot of insulin options available. They're continually being adapted and made better. But the big problem is that there isn't available biosimilar insulins of the newest variety. And if you cap insulin at a price, there's going to be even less incentive for new market entrants to come in. And those new market entrants is really what reduces the cost in the long term and also improves the quality of the insulin. So right now, if you want cheaper insulin, you can get older kinds of insulin for much cheaper, but of course no one wants to. And the reason no one wants to is because there's been massive R&D investment in creating good insulin. The reason why there's been massive R&D investment is because it's profitable to produce insulin, and as more insulins are created, the cost will go down and you'll have these insulins that we currently have now becoming cheaper. Cap insulin, that process doesn't happen. So if you want to reduce prices, not a bad policy, but there are better options than price capping, right? And we can get into that later in the discussion. But yeah, I think price capping it's a very blunt, not the best solution for this problem.
Sondsol?
Yeah, so I looked at this bill. This isn't like an across the board cap. It puts the rest of the cost onto the insurers, and as such, this only really affects people that already have insurance. So it's $35, and then the insurance agency has to foot the rest of the bill. This isn't a blanket price ceiling on insulin. I think that if we were to do that sort of thing, it would be bad. I agree with Taftaj, but that's not the bill that we're talking about right now. Putting a ceiling on any kind of medication is necessarily going to take the profits away from that company so that they can't invest into R&D, and that's really important. There are better ways that we can do this for across the board medications, like buying all the IP rights immediately after a new drug has been approved by the FDA, so that company still gets its return on investment while simultaneously, not being the monopoly of what that medication is. So yeah, and also as a final point, one of the biggest reasons that insulin prices are so high is because of middlemen that are kind of distributing and setting the prices at these different pharmacies. So that's also something that we should look at. Instead of having all these different middlemen agencies, we should maybe think about having the government do that, or at least having the government be an agent in that to lower the prices of these drugs.
Okay, I'm now going to throw it over to James.
Insulin should be capped at $0, along with literally every other form of medicine, because for-profit healthcare is fucking ghoulish. The real death panels are insurance companies, and I appreciate Sondsol, the staunch Democrat, reminding everybody that the bill as proposed by the Democrats that cleared the Democratic portion of the House is one that leaves the uninsured to go fuck themselves and die because, neoliberal economic policy is based, I guess.
Is that everyone? Yeah. Anyway, insulin.
No,
in
wait.
America.
I said IRI.
Oh, I didn't hear.
Oh,
that.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. I actually agree with Sprout. Surprisingly, 193 Republicans voted no, including Matt Gaetz, who's justified that by saying that people should lose weight first, which is pretty ridiculous. So I think this is a winning issue. I think it's tangible. It's something the American people want. 1 in 10 Americans suffer from diabetes. More than 1 in 3 have pre-diabetes. This is an actual issue people care about. And so this is what we should be talking about, not kids' sexuality in kindergarten. I mean, this is crazy. So I'm all for it. I think we should cap insulin at 35. I think we should cap the number of Republicans in the House, too.
Based.
Okay. Now, counterpoints.
Conservatives have to reframe what they want out of society. And basically, one of the things that frustrates the piss out of me is saving a dime in order to spend a fucking dollar. It's one of the dumbest fucking things that we do as a culture. And I'm sick of slashing the social safety net and acting like we're doing people favors. Because the truth is, we always make arguments about the communitarian safeguards that will miraculously fucking appear once we slash the fucking government. And then we don't enable people to do that. So that's what pisses me off. And if I was to reframe this, I think kind of an interesting question is perverse incentives versus directed incentives. I think what a lot of conservatives and libertarians are concerned with leftists is that if you got a fucking problem, throw government and money at it. 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 And before you know, you're just chasing your fucking tail down every single fucking human problem that's ever existed ever. Whereas what a conservative or libertarian or fiscal conservative position should be is how do we incentivize good behavior, disincentivize bad behavior, make our citizens healthy, happy, productive human beings from a psychological perspective, and allow our people to live dignified lives in which they can take care of their families and still be economically productive. If we have to ask these questions, then we might actually have a functioning society instead of dickheads fucking incentivizing bad habits and then other dickheads slashing at the things that are keeping people alive. But that would be if we lived in a rational society. So I'll yield there.
So
Okay. And that's it. Everybody can commence.
So I'm gonna go a little bit against Sondsol here. I don't know what bill you were talking about, but the bill that I read said that it was $35. The rest of it would be covered by insurance. And if the person was not insured, it was capped at $35 still, and the rest of the cost would just be $35. But if you have insurance, the rest of the cost would be covered by insurance. Now what I am going to say is type 1 are 100% dependent on insulin. And Eli Lilly has owned the rights to insulin since 1982. I think they just recently lost it, and Walmart has come up with a rival brand of insulin. I think Eli Lilly has made enough money off insulin to continue R&D. And I think that like the R&D argument for insulin is a little bit insane, because if it's been around since 1982 and Eli Lilly's gained all the profits off of it, to continue to gain profits, I feel is completely morally incorrect.
You realize there are different versions of insulin, and not all of them are patented to the same degree, right?
I mainly talk about type 1.
Okay. Insulin has been developed for a long time, and there's a lot of different versions of it. And older versions, the patents aren't still available. They're still not active. So the latest ones, they're developed by like 3 companies, right? So it's not just Eli Lilly, but they are patented. And the reason why they're patented is because the patent process incentivizes the creation of these newer versions of insulin. If you want, you can get the older kinds of insulin. They're cheaper and they suck, right? So no one wants these. They want the newest ones. And the reason why we have the newest ones is because of the patent process and because it's not capped. So if you cap insulin, you're not going to get better insulin in the future. So you're making the lives of insulin-dependent people worse by disincentivizing market entrants, which would create biosimilar copies, which would actually reduce cost the most in the long term. And you reduce incentive to create new, better versions of the drug. So I think that if you want to reduce prices, there are legitimate ways to do that, but capping prices is not the way.
Okay, we pay, according to this Fortune article, we pay on average 8 times the price for insulin of comparable developed countries. The idea that these prices, this isn't like India, this is like England. The idea that these prices are a product of them needing to meet their like R&D budget is just not true. The same products have gone up in price, and there's a deliberate lack of transparency in the insulin supply chain that makes it really difficult to investigate whether or not this is price fixing, which attorney generals from over 20 US states have independently investigated the insulin companies for, and there are multiple lawsuits pending on that front specifically. No, this is not an area where like the free market is functioning at its best. If ever one thing, if ever that could even happen, what we're dealing with here is an industry with an inelastic demand. It's insulin, you get it or you die, right? I mean, not always, but you need it. With an incredibly opaque, like behind the scenes situation. You have the whole 2-tier pricing between like the direct price that people pay and the real price they pay, like the insurance companies through the rebates. Like this whole system is designed for them to make as much money as possible. The fact these prices going up have nothing to do with actual market need. They're just making money because they can. They don't care. They don't care if you die. We know pharmaceutical corporations don't give a fuck if people die because we know about the opioid crisis. We know they push these drugs to doctors regardless of whether or not they're needed. The idea that these people are operating with any ethical constraints is just not true. They're barely operating within legal ones.
Don't forget about
Okay,
that.
so but like here's the thing. I
I
agree.
think everyone responsible for these price increases should be brought to the fucking Hague, because we're talking about like a massive like case of no. People die every day because of this, and we're like, oh well, it's necessary for R&D. No, I don't care. I don't care if it gets price fixed. I don't care if the whole industry gets nationalized. I do actually. I want that. I don't care what method they take. But like the issue here is right now there's like a fucking dragon like killing people every day, and we're like debating which like type of arrow would be optimal for like no. We have a problem that we need to take care of, and it's the pharmaceutical industry broadly, mind you. But
If you want to
like,
make the lives of diabetic people worse, then yeah, cap insulin.
why
Otherwise,
is it worse
it's
here?
water.
Okay,
than
because
every
really quick,
developed country then?
Really quick, Vaush. So like I agree with you. I agree with you to a certain point.
Wait. He asked Taft a question. I want to make sure Taft has the opportunity to respond to it. All right,
We have it worse than every comparable country, like materially by a huge amount. Like, do you think that Americans are getting 8 times the quality
You
of
realize our
insulin as people in
healthcare
France?
system is different than like France or England, right?
Worse. Yes, it's worse. That's
Okay.
the problem.
And the reason is not because like these countries are capping prices. It's because they have like incredible government involvement. And so when the government can go to these companies and like negotiate directly with the prices, this is what Canada does. And it reduces the price. Like what you're
To a
suggesting.
fraction of the American price.
Yeah. And what you're suggesting is like, that's a good solution,
But
right?
doesn't
Like
that lower the price?
if you want, yes. And if you wanted like a single payer healthcare system, that might be a legitimate like way to reduce the price, right? Without these like bad market results that like decrease like incentive to produce good versions of
I
the
don't
drug.
think it would decrease incentive to produce.
I agree. If we have like a single payer healthcare system or whatever. But this solution of like capping the prices is the solution we're talking about. And it's not a good solution. So yeah,
It's the solution we have on the table right now, and I do not think it would cut in. I don't think it would cut into R&D development, and the idea that it would cut into startups is ridiculous. The insulin production market in America is an oligopoly, and it has been for a century. There are 3 companies that manage like real distribution of insulin in this country.
So
We're not
Vaush,
cutting into startups.
If insulin, the profit for selling insulin was much lower, do you think that decreases or increases the likelihood of new market entrants to try to produce biosimilar versions of the latest drug?
The idea that this is a realistic proposal when we're talking about the 3 insulin
Increase or
giants.
decrease?
Wait, hold on. So don't Econ 101 me. Pharmaceutical companies have a direct relationship with these insulin producers, which have been dominant and oligopoly. They've been oligopoly in the field that we're talking about for literal decades.
And if you cap prices, that gets worse.
No. This is like some
worsens the
101. Like if you regulate this, it'll be harder for them to make the next Facebook. Like, no, we have a problem right now. And the problem is not we need new startups to drive down the price. The price is already driven down in other countries. The issue here isn't the quality of the product. Wait,
Realize that other countries have different.
Yes, but it's just another way of lowering the price. The issue here is you would want new startups if new technological investment could lead to a lower production cost for insulin.
Which it has historically.
The production cost for insulin here is the same as over there, more or less. We're the same developed countries. They have it much cheaper, not because they've have like a more efficient insulin production, but because the government smashes these fucks into the dirt.
Wait,
That's
wait,
what
wait.
we
It's
need
the
to do.
it's the
Smash
middleman. It's the middleman that I was talking about. That's
Agreed, but we can't
right.
just snap our fingers and get rid of the whole healthcare system. But people
Well,
are
it's not the
dying
whole
day
health.
in,
Right.
day
No, no, I agree with you. Right. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's things that you're saying that are correct. It's just like, instead of having like a very brave take like Mr. James had over here, where we just say, set the price ceiling at 0, soy, we should probably try and think of a way to try and mitigate the prices of medication across the board, not just insulin, but any other kind of medication.
I agree. It
So
got
what
through
kinds
the
of
House.
Right. And I agree that this is a step in the right direction. It's a very small step. It's not going to help everybody in the entire United States, but it's something that we can do. Like, if we're going to talk about like, oh, all these pharmaceutical companies are just out to make a profit. Well, fuck yeah, they're making a profit. They're a privately owned. Most of them are privately owned corporations. I assume. I don't know if there are any that aren't privately owned, but if they're making a profit, that's fucking fine. We live in a capitalist economy right now. All right, let them make their profits. I think that one solution that I've heard that I think is really interesting is to just like buy the IP rights off of them as soon as a drug is FDA approved. I think that's a totally legitimate way to do
a
this.
great solution.
Right. You can also talk about a public option
For
or a
government
Medicare.
production?
Wait, what?
For government production, like the government's going to open up its own lab, might as well just nationalize them at that point.
Wait, no. Wait, not
But I think
necessarily.
what he's
Buying the
talking about
IP is
buying the patent.
buying the
intellectual
patent so
property.
that more generics and more competition can happen in the market to bring
Oh,
the
sorry. I
prices
thought
down.
you, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
No,
So that's
well,
like an
keep-
actual
keep-
solution.
With insulin production, like the problem is that to make insulin at the levels you'd need to compete with the big three, which by the way have favorable business relationships with existing pharmaceutical companies. Again, like it's not as though you can just march into the game with your startup lab and start selling like at your local CVS pharmacy. Like the necessary capital to create a competitor to the big three here in America would be in the billions.
I don't
So
disagree.
To me, the
I don't
idea
disagree.
of startups competing is just not as productive or likely as price caps that right now can pass through the House. This is a politically viable
But it's not
solution to a
just
real
startups.
problem.
It's not just startups. There are other pharmaceutical companies that could have the capability to do this, but they don't want to put the money into
why wouldn't they just
because they don't have the they don't want
Here's
to
the
put the
thing.
money into the R&D to create their
Why
own
wouldn't they
insulin
just price
because
fix?
they
No.
Okay, wait, slow down, please. Slow down. Now you're going too fast for me to follow. Okay.
Okay, really quick. One of the reasons that the big three insulin producers in the United States are able to hold that position is because they are patenting not necessarily new insulin technologies, although there have been minor improvements over the past like 20 years. It's the delivery mechanisms that it's like a process called evergreening, where you're constantly creating new ways to deliver the insulin into the bloodstream, and therefore it's more effective, right? So
Wouldn't the new companies just price fix too?
Wait, but we don't know that there's price fixing. But
I mean,
what
all the
all we
prices
can
are
do,
rising to like massive levels above what they
right,
were
but
before for
we
the
can
same
also
product.
right. But the correlation, you could say it's either price fixing, or you could correlate it to the same kind of thing that I just talked about, the different delivery methods, right? So if we want to talk about like how to solve this
No, the
with ways
same
that we can
product.
prove, right? With
Not
ways that
the
we can
same
prove.
product.
Right?
No, the same products have gone up in price. There have been new things that have also
okay,
gone up
yeah.
in price, but the same things. The idea, like
Sure.
this is the idea that the insulin manufacturers are price fixing is a very uncontroversial, as of yet unsettled legal take. I think
Right,
if
but
we had
all
a
we
new
can
startup,
do
they
is
would just
make-
also price fix.
But my problem is we can only give solutions for things that we can absolutely prove. If they want to take them to court, then they should take them to court, and then we can
Yeah.
prove that, and that's totally fine.
Well,
But
we're
if we're
trying.
going to
It's
look for
really
solutions
difficult
that
to
we
do
can
that.
actually talk about right now, we're going to be talking
Price
about the
cap.
things that a price cap could work, but then we're talking about taking
It's a
away money
solution.
from, it is a solution, but it's one that is less optimal than the other ones
Sure,
for
we're
all
not
the
gonna
reasons
get
that
an
we've.
optimal.
But
We'll
right.
do the
I just think
optimal
it's
when
a
we can
bad
do the optimal.
solution, right? Like,
Nope.
I think that it would reduce prices, but I think that there
I
are
hope so.
negative like externalities that you're not considering that other
There would
solutions
be,
have.
but also it would lower the prices.
Yeah, I think, listen, I'll agree with you. It'll lower the prices, right? Here's the thing. You can get insulin for cheaper if you buy like older versions of the drug, right? Yeah, that's
I don't
part
know
of
what
the
this
thing.
has to do with
The older versions that aren't produced anymore, and the older versions that
No, they're
aren't
still
available
produced.
in the
The
United
thing
States
is that
market.
they're not
Only
produced.
three companies provide insulin in the United States market. That's Novo Nordisk, Sanofi,
No,
and Eli
they're-
Lilly. Eli Lilly being one of the most prominent.
There's three
And they
major
produce-
ones that have 95% of the market share. There are other ones that are up and coming that have biosimilar or like what we would call generic, but it's a
Those were also
different
gonna be
classification.
overpriced if we
Not
didn't.
generic.
No. I looked at the prices earlier today, and they are significantly cheaper. Holy fucking shit!
Well,
But
like a what?
what?
Because keep in mind, average insulin prices in the U.S. about 9 times comparably developed countries. So
Right.
This
But
had
like,
better be
I'm talking
way cheaper.
Yes,
to
I'm
bring it
talking
in
about
line.
like $250 or $280 a month to like $45 a month for like the exact same thing in a biosimilar generic insulin, right?
Well, that is a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, it's significantly better. But that's what I'm saying. Like adding more competition into the market is actually like we can see it. This generic only released, I think, in either very, very late 2019 or 2020. I can't remember off the top of my head. But like we can see the direct effects by adding more competition into the market. We can see the like drastic drop in price in the cost of insulin, right? So like that's the sort of thing that
no,
we're
it's
talking
going
about.
up. We'll
I'm sorry,
need
like
to see
the-
how
the
this affects
generic-
the market.
Oh my God.
Right. We'll need to
Please,
see how
for
this
the love
affects
of
the
God.
market broadly before we like are able to make any determinations here. At the end of the day, price caps are generally not the most effective way of handling like price gouging. You generally want other within market solutions because you want to deal with the issues in market rather than just try to have a government like flat shear off the cap. The issue for me is just political viability. Whenever I support, as a leftist, whenever I support a law Biden puts through, none of this shit is optimal for me. Build Back Better wasn't optimal for me. None of this shit is good. I hate all of this, but I try to go for what seems politically viable. And if I'm going to do the head math on like, well, how much harm will this do relative to how many lives this will save now? Like right now, is this an imperfect solution? Sure. But the fact that it got through the House at all in a country like this, I think that's pretty good. And I support it for that reason. If there are devastating market externality negative effects, we're the goddamn US of A.
Sure.
We will fix it.
Yeah,
So,
and I
Sondsol,
agree.
I have a
Republicans
question.
voted.
Sondsol, I have a question. I have a very specific question for you. So, So you keep talking about these other companies coming through and all this stuff. We can take a look at the EpiPen. We can take a look at insulin for this. For what I'm getting ready to say is that the prices have drastically increased. And you can say that the prices could increase because of inflation, because they're not getting the same amount of money they used to. But for the same product, why would the price drastically increase that much? For example, Humalog increased 585% from 2001 to 2015. So why would the same product be
Delivery
worth
methods.
585% more than it was in 2001?
Delivery methods.
Delivery,
That's what- yes.
it's the same. It's the same product.
Get
Humalog.
around.
It's
No, I'm
not-
gonna leave it
it's
up.
It's the exact
They've been
same.
talking for 10 fucking minutes, dude. I'm leaving it up.
Sorry, I'll just respond. Like the
already
the
said.
drug is the same. That's what I'm trying to like get across. Like the drug is like mostly the same. There's slight tweaks in the formulation because of the delivery method that is more efficient. But
Are you
because
talking
of
about
that,
shots versus pumps? Because those are sold separately.
no. I'm talking about like especially with like the pens and the shots. I think the little EpiPens or not EpiPens. you know what I mean.
The two biggest ones are actual shots where you actually buy a shot, pull it
But
out of
like
a
a-
vial,
yeah,
and
yeah.
put it's and then the other biggest one are pumps. And this is where people who have diabetes have been going to for a while now. Is they've all been transitioning to pumps because pumps actually regulate your blood sugar a lot better. But again, the price of Humalog increased 585%. I can't imagine a delivery method that would make me think that my product is now worth 485% more than what it originally was.
I
And to give
agree
it
with
to give
you.
it an actual dollar value, in 2001, Humalog was worth $35. In 2015, Humalog was worth $234.
Listen. I'm sitting here. I'm agreeing with you that the prices are going up in a way that they don't need to go up. The stated reason is because of patent laws that are getting in the way of any kind of generic being made until very, very, very recently. So like that's what I'm saying. Like these are the stated reasons that they're putting forward.
Okay,
And I really want to hear. I want to hear what James has to say. I'm so fucking
Well,
ready for this
no,
fucking
no,
brain dead,
no.
fucking zero price ceiling take.
Sondsol, we got to throw the counter first, and then we can have James after.
All right. Holy shit. You guys, it's fucking marketing. It's selling people shit. That's what the fuck it is. We already have a military industrial complex. 50% of the fucking country thinks it's goddamn based. They love F-15 fucking fighting Eagles. They fucking love F-16 fighting Falcons. They fucking love F-22 Raptors. They love all this shit. you got to fucking sell it as the health industrial complex. You have to have a public-private fucking synergized goddamn thing where you incentivize R&D. We pay 30% fucking more for the same fucking health outcomes as most major developed countries, but most people who like the private system are scared that we're going to lose our fucking R&D, we're going to lose our fucking edge, and we're going to lose our ability to innovate new technology. So you go to them and you say, hey guys, we already do this shit with the military. The reason why we can hit a fucking camel cunt hair from fucking goddamn 10 miles away with a fucking railgun is because we invest in this shit. So we need to create a health industrial complex where we're not going to nationalize it. We're not going to price fix, because then you're going to have all the Econ 101 people fucking arguing. You're going to subsidize it, just like food, just like the military. And when the fucking goddamn fucking dumbass fucking conservatarians show up and they say, socialism is when the government does stuff, you say, no, bro, you need to watch this guy named Vaush. He'll explain the definition of socialism so you're not fucking cringe and saying dumb shit every fucking day. And even if you fucking hate him and think he's a fucking piece of shit, he'll at least inform you on leftist politics so you don't sound cringe when you go into your next fucking Facebook goddamn debate, okay? So it needs to be brought to you by Monster Energy Drink. There needs to be commercials about it, and there needs to be screaming fucking eagles and goddamn fucking fireworks. And the fact that y'all can't, like, seriously, I'm just going to segue this into the previous conversation. This is marketing, motherfuckers. This is convincing a bunch of dumb shit or dumb motherfuckers that the correct thing is the cool
All
thing.
right,
That's
I promise
what fucking
I'll chill.
politics
Sorry,
is.
I was.
So fucking figure
I
that
did a
the
lot
fuck
of research
out,
for this
and
one,
then we
okay?
can stop having these stupid ass conversations about, well, you
I
know,
read all last
if we
night and
fucking
all
cap
today.
it, is that going to fuck people over? Or here's the fucking injection goddamn methods. Okay, I love it, but y'all have a social development disorder that I'm not going to say because I'm not trying to get TOS'd. There you go.
Counterpoints. My issue remains the same, and it wasn't even addressed in your health industrial complex thing. You're saying that
Tell me your point.
you're saying we can. Okay, so the price of Humalog increased by 585% between 2001 and 2015. I'm sorry.
Subsidize that shit. Have the fucking government goddamn pay for R&D.
But why? Why did it go from $285 to $234 per vial?
Because they're greedy motherfuckers. That's why. And also on top of that, because this is a real point. This is a real point.
Give me one second. At the very beginning of when they start releasing this stuff, it's supposed to be the most expensive because they're trying to recover their costs from research and development. They're trying to recover those costs as quick as they can so that way they can start to make a profit. So why in the hell would it get 585% more expensive in the span of 14 years?
Two Econ 101 subjects. Number one, demand. In the past 50 years, the amount of diabetics in the United States has like decoupled. It's fucking like 10 times what it used to be. Number two, price elasticity. What is your fucking life worth to you? What will you pay to survive? And when you answer that fucking question, that's the price that they're going to fucking set it at. So if you're a poor, stupid, rural motherfucker. Yeah, of course it's morally flawed. You know how you solve it? The medical industrial complex. You subsidize the fuck out of it. You R&D a bunch of new shit. You make a bunch of cheap fucking options, and you make the fucking F-22 Raptor version of the fucking insulin pump that tickles your fucking balls while it's putting insulin in your fucking veins. Okay, there you go.
It's not true, counterpoints, because there are other versions of insulin that also help you to deal with your diabetic issues, and they're cost much less than like the newest
Do
version.
you disagree with my general conception of a private-public partnership where the medical industry is heavily subsidized by the government in order to create new products?
I don't necessarily disagree with that.
We should
actually, I mean, we could get into it maybe, but like that's a different discussion. I mean, we're specifically talking about like insulin and price caps, and again, there's like an added dimension here, and it's just the competition between products. Right? Like you are able to get the alternative forms of insulin, the older versions, for much, much cheaper because they aren't patented. And so lots of people can produce them. And that availability of supply is what drives the price so far down. And that availability of supply doesn't exist for the newest patented versions. And we want there to be newer versions, right? And by having no price caps, you incentivize the creation of newer, better versions.
What the fuck is that?
Okay, so we're gonna throw it over to James or Vaush. What were you? Okay, you just
no. Go ahead.
You're just gaslighting me and
no. Go
using
ahead.
me
go
as a
ahead.
moderator.
No.
Do y'all hear
me.
that?
I'm only like 60K. You're almost like 400K. This is bullying of the highest order.
My subs are going down. Don't worry. We'll meet soon. Anyway,
Eventually.
Go.
Oh,
No, I just wanted to point out, since Sondsol wanted to throw it out there, try to score some points back after getting pasted by Vaush for 20 minutes. The price of insulin went up 1,000% from 1999 to 2019, which also ancillarily doesn't involve the newest delivery methods that Toft is trying to throw out there, such as the nasal and the faster absorbing and the different delivery methods. Has literally nothing to do with the price of insulin going up 1,000% up
Do you think
until
they're
2019
contributing-
over a 20-year span. And the reason
Do you
for
think
that
they
is very
contribute?
simple. Because when you have for-profit healthcare, to Connor's point, profit is nearly unlimited because people will spend whatever it takes to keep their kid or their wife or whoever else alive before they spend money on anything else. It's kind of the I win card when you have people's mortality in the palm of your hand and the next sentence out of your mouth is, fuck you, pay me. You know what usually happens? People get paid.
You realize that nobody has argued against that whatsoever this entire time, right?
Oh, well, I was hearing about how
We're explaining
competition
why
was gonna-
we're explaining how to bring the price down. We're not defending the idea that insulin is super fucking expensive and that this inelastic market that does have elastic goods within, that we're not saying that this inelastic market is okay to be this expensive. Right?
Or
We're just saying
desirable.
we're trying to make an argument as to how the best way to bring the price down is. Your idea that we should just set the price cap at 0 is just this actual price ceiling or IQ ceiling of 0 that you've hit. Okay, it's unbelievable that you haven't offered a single solution this time, and you've just said uncontroversial statements over and over and over and over. Yes, insulin is too fucking expensive. How do you actually say that we should fix it, my dude?
Hey, could everybody in chat from a foreign country where insulin costs $0 through their national healthcare plan, please just type out the name of their country in chat so
Do you think
Sondsol can
price
see that
caps
there
and
are
national
actual
healthcare are the same
upgrades.
thing?
It's not
I'm
a
sorry for
price cap.
talking while you were interrupting.
The price cap isn't what makes it free at the point of purchase for them.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so sorry. Do you think that they just create the insulin out of thin air and then they just give it to people? No, the government purchases it. They set the prices for that. That is one solution.
Right.
But you're not making the argument for that. You're just saying it should be free, but you're not explaining why it should be or how it should be free. You're not making an
people
argument.
don't
You're
die.
virtue signaling right
Health
now.
industrial complex.
If I could supplement a little bit.
Yeah,
I think
make his
there are
argument
strong-
for him because he's clearly incapable of doing it himself.
No, well,
I
don't
can't talk over
attribute-
you when you're spitting into a mic, son.
I just want to say
You've been
that I
trying to
think-
spin to a mic. You've just been unable to fucking talk over anybody this entire time. Go ahead, Vaush.
I just think you can make strong arguments for the nationalization of the pharmaceutical industry, because it's one of those industries because there's an inelastic demand on many of the products they produce, and a ton of the R&D that feeds into it is already done in universities or otherwise through federal grants. It seems like one of those things that could, I think, pretty reasonably be moved over. There's also not much of a cosmetic element to R&D for pharmaceuticals. Like if the government was in charge of making breakfast cereals, we'd have 5. I want 5 million, But in terms of pharmaceutical goods, if it does the job, it does the job. Delivery methods, maybe you could get subsidization there. I think there are strong arguments for it. And I especially even for capitalists, and I know not everyone here is a socialist, but I think you can make at least understand that many of the benefits of a market economy really break apart through this very opaque and very inelastic market that seems
that's
like
what
a
we're
lot
saying,
of its
though.
research comes about, through federal work.
Well, I agree with a lot of what you're saying right now, right? That's the thing, though. Finding a solution is the goal of making policy, right? You want to actually fix a problem, right? To look at another country and say, well, look, they don't have to pay for their insulin. Well, yes, motherfucker, they do. They just have to do it through the government sets the price, or the government makes it free at the point of purchase,
And the
or
government has a lot of negotiation power, which is a
Right.
huge advantage.
Right,
Okay,
but
can
like
I
my
can I
problem
make a point about the health industrial complex, please?
very last point
So-
that I want to say is just like to say that the price should be zero at the point of purchase is not a policy. Like, it's not a policy. You have to say like how you arrive at that policy, whether it's nationalization, which you can make an argument for, but you haven't yet, whether it's for a Medicare for all system, whether it's just like the government is able to negotiate drug prices. These are arguments, but saying it just needs to be free isn't an argument.
Okay, so the reason why you don't want to do nationalization, if you're using the military industrial complex as an example, is that the main thing that happens, or the main concern from a conservative or libertarian perspective, is stagnation in governmental organizations, where everything becomes regimented, everything becomes orthodox, and there's no room for innovation. So the cool thing about the military industrial complex is that it has a bunch of veterans who are public employees who learn the tools and trade of warfare, and then they get out of the system and they say, hey, listen, I made this little dinky invention that I thought would have been really cool, but because I was in a highly standardized, highly regimented environment, I was not able to innovate, and basically I was told that I was a fucking lunatic. Here's my fucking doohickey that allows me to, reload my AR-15 fucking, 0.5 seconds faster. Here's my fucking variable zoom scope that I fucking specifically designed because I thought that it was a cool innovation. Here's how I think we can implement drone technology with current available communications gear, and here's the kind of like miniature technology that I think we can develop. There should be a public-private partnership similar to that within the health industry. That way you have private people who say, hey, injecting myself with fucking insulin every goddamn day sucks. And on top of that, I feel like I get a single boost of insulin. And then the rest of my day is kind of like I have high energy dips and low energy dips. Wouldn't it be cool if I had a slow release function? And then that private incentivization to make money creates these new technologies that we're talking about. This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the conversation, where the reason why the right wing dislikes the fucking left wing is perverse incentives, in which you basically say, oh, there's a problem, throw government and money at it. There's a problem, throw government and money at it. There's a problem, throw government and money at it. Is because you don't think about the perverse incentives that keep these things on balance. So that's why I am advocating for the Screaming Eagle, brought to you by Monster Energy Health Industrial Complex. And I hope you join me on that adventure.
As long
We
as
already
it's
have
completely
that.
publicly owned.
It's
With no
better
Yeah,
than
we already have that. To Vaush's point
What?
earlier, we already have that. The government literally writes out hundreds of millions of dollars of grants a year to universities so they can study all this shit, and then they come up with one humdinger
and
of
then
an idea. And of course, the university owns the IP, not the people who did the research, because of the licensing paperwork involved. And then they sell it to a corporation, and now the corporation owns the IP.
No.
Okay, and then hold on,
What?
Toft, before
Please,
you
Taft,
do it.
correct me. Please.
No,
Okay,
I mean,
you
like,
guys
there's
correct.
lots of generic research which is done by universities. But when it comes to actually developing a drug and bringing it to market, there's an enormous amount of risk that private companies take on in order to do this. And so when you look at, for example, like biosimilar insulin variants, those are not developed by universities. They'd just be like prohibitively expensive. And the government isn't interested in like, just like blanket betting on these things. It lets private companies bet on which, research path is actually
Hold
going
on,
to
really
develop.
quick.
The government
It's
can
my
absorb monetary risks better than literally any. The American government can absorb monetary risks better than any institution.
It just
that's ever
in this
existed.
case, it's passing them off to the private companies. Like, yeah, in
Maybe it
theory, like
shouldn't.
the United States government is huge and could absorb these, but
So,
I mean,
can I just say one quick thing?
all the pharmaceutical R&D done in a year is like a marginal fraction. I mean, compared to the stuff we spend money on, right? It just seems like a lot of this R&D is done by like university students.
Hold
and
on, really
professors
quick.
Anyway.
It's my understanding that the R&D that happens at the university level is for like the baseline technology. So like, for instance, the mRNA technologies are what the universities made, but the actual companies that put the R&D into like creating that mRNA technology into the Pfizer vaccine for COVID is the IP that they own.
The government should do that.
Okay,
they can. I'm only saying that we have the research capacity. Like we've demonstrated I don't think there's
Right, but that's
anything
what my
about the
argument
private
was
sector
good.
that
They
is
just don't
uniquely
do it
capable.
right now.
Right, but that's
Well,
what my
there's no
argument was
reason for them
earlier,
to.
Vosh. I was saying that like the private companies can like put the money into the R&D initially, and then the government could just like come through, purchase the IP off of them, and it like offloads some work from the government onto these private companies.
We pay for the R&D by buying their products, whereas if the government handled it through our tax dollars, they could then provide it to us at no cost at the point of service. The only point I'm making is that the private companies are not unique in their ability to absorb risk or do research. The only reason that the universities aren't making drugs themselves is because they're not pharmaceutical companies. That there aren't public pharmaceutical companies in America, but there could be. I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't. You tell a bunch of these university students, like, all right, let's go. We're doing it federally, baby. You've got a bigger budget now, much bigger, funded through Congress.
I just want to say, like, if you look at, like, these companies spend billions more.
We're gonna wrap up because I'm about to pass out.
Okay.
That's fair.
These companies spend billions or more on marketing than R&D. So, I mean, this idea that they need to charge all this money to make up for their R&D is bullshit. You can look it up yourselves and see that they're spending way more on their marketing. Now, if the government, as Vaush said, were to pay for the research or whatever, you get rid of the marketing right there. So, but the bigger point is that we need a win on the board for government getting involved and bringing down the healthcare costs to people so that we can keep pushing on that. And eventually we can get to that point where we have affordable healthcare. This opens up the doors, a tiny little crack in the door. Same thing with Build Back Better. For the first time, they were talking about Medicare negotiating the prices of drugs. So I think this is just a huge win to crack the door a little bit, start to open up people's eyes and say, hey, wait a second, maybe the government can bring down the cost of my healthcare.
I just looked out the window. The sun's coming up. Oh my God. Okay. So we're going to wrap up. Everybody can do outros. I'm going to start with counterpoints. And thank you to everybody who's donated. We got a lot of subs today, and I really appreciate that.
Okay. So, as always, I'm centrist and I'm correct. Fucking American bald eagle, fucking health industrial complex. So take the bad ideas of the left, which have some grain of truth to them, bounce them against the reactionary right who overcorrects and says that the left has nothing to offer, filter it through actually digesting what people are saying, and then bring it into a popularly palatable solution that could actually appeal to the average American mind. That's my job as a centrist, and I love my fucking job. If you love that, or Warhammer 40,000, or you fucking hate that, but you still want to subscribe to my channel anyways, type in counterpoints, common spelling into YouTube. You can find me. We just gained like 3,500 subs in the past week, 500,000 views off of Warhammer 40K content alone. And while that might not sound impressive to the people who are in this room, that is pretty cool. And I'm getting close to fucking 20K, and I'm hoping to fucking steamroll up to 100K. That way I can get out of the fucking wage cage and be a degenerate fucking streaming sack of shit, just like the professionals in this room. Love you. Thank you. Have a great night. I'm going to hang out, though.
Awesome. I'm going to throw it over to IRI.
Well, I'm going to say have a gay night, as Connor meant to say there, but I had a lot of fun. Look, I got invited to this 7 hours ago. I don't know shit about the cost of insulin. All I know is that this is a very popular thing. We had 12 Republicans agreeing with the Democrats. Republicans had the worst talking points ever to justify why they were against it, like lose weight. That's the reason why. I would like to see Medicare for all. I just think that we have to get there incrementally, and this is one of the steps. We got to show the American people that we can negotiate lower prices, and I understand that people are still going to get paid, and there's the middlemen still there, the pharmacy managers, benefit managers, whatever, but we got to start somewhere. So let's do this. Everybody loves insulin. A lot of people need it. A lot of people know someone who uses it. So let's get this W on the board, show the American people that the government can do something for the love of God, instead of fighting about whether kids can identify as whatever in kindergarten, man. It's insane to me. And fund the police. I go by, I'm really important. Coming out, we talk electoral politics, the Senate, the House. We have a lot of fun. There's a lot of drama. The midterms are heating up. It's getting exciting.
Don't know if it's Taft.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I just think that price caps are not an effective strategy for reducing price. I think there's a lot of ways to reduce price that don't necessarily come with the negative drawbacks that price caps do. So I think a lot of those have been thrown out, and I think they'd be better options. Government negotiation would be like a big one. There's lots of ways you can do that, and it's not quite, doesn't quite come with the negative externalities that price caps do. You can follow me, Taft Hash. I post sexy pictures, which is my main thing on Twitter, so be careful if you follow me there. But yeah, do politics streams, super fun. Thanks everyone for talking. I had a good time. Hopefully it wasn't too spicy.
Okay. We'll throw it over to Sondsol, the Hippy Dippy contract recipient.
Yeah, I think I'm confused where, except for with James, I don't know exactly where we disagree. Like, we all agree that the prices are going too high. Really, at the end of the day, I'm for whatever works. I want people to be able to afford the medication that they want. I want to do it in the best way possible so that we can continue to create more medicine so that people can have illnesses that they're living with be either cured or managed more effectively. I genuinely don't know where me and Vaush even disagree here. It feels like we would say that we agree and then we would end up disagreeing. But yeah, insulin is too expensive. We need to bring the price down. We need to do it in the most effective way possible so that we don't harm some other aspect of our either healthcare system or economy. And are we doing our shills at the end here too?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm Sondsol. I am very, very bad at video games, but that's my selling point. If you want to see me do stuff, I'm Sondsol on Twitch and on YouTube. I'm almost to 1,000 subs. And go subscribe to the YouTube so that I can give all that money to my editor. Thanks.
Wonderful. I'm now going to throw it over to James.
Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with my medicine that prevents people from dying should be 0. And then we work backwards from there because, again, for-profit healthcare is ghoulish. And talking about how we can reduce the price is just another way of saying, well, what number of dead people is palatable, to keep the profits up? And frankly, that's fucking sickening.
He's such a fucking slimy
also,
piece of shit.
I
He's
used
such
to
a
take
fucking loser.
sexy pictures on Twitter, but I got banned. So the only place you can find me now is here on Twitch at James from the Internet.
Such a fucking
and
loser. He got
last but not least,
hey,
IRI, midterms are coming, me and you still got a little chat to have, but it'll be all good, brother, I promise. Dylan Burns, as always, I appreciate you. And final reminder, Sunday, Hippy Dippy Tag Team Battle Royal.
That is true.
James from the Internet, Poly People, Tracksuit Mafia hits the ring.
That is true. For many of you who don't know, we also have a recruitment show. And this Sunday, as we try to build up the tag team division with the debut of the tag team championship belts, we're going to be having a rumble with multiple debuting tag teams.
They don't want to hear what I have to say. I said that I'm for whatever works. They just want to be angry at someone that they think is a Destiny orbiter. They do if you communicate it properly. Tell me where I was wrong at one point in this. Vaush agreed with everything I said and then said, I think false things, but whatever.
We got to forge our own path forward. Now I'm going to throw it over to Sprout.
All right. Yes, I am for price capping insulin. Price capping insulin is going to be an emergency measure. People are dying. One out of every 4 people who have diabetes is rationing their insulin, which is extremely dangerous for someone with diabetes to do. Like I said, my dad has type 1, my sister has type 1, my father-in-law has type 1. So I'm very versed in type 1, not very versed in type 2, but this is something that needs to happen immediately. We cannot keep letting Eli Lilly and companies like the such raise their prices by 585% because for the same product, it's just a vial of Humalog that they were selling, and raised it 585% because, well, they deemed that they wanted more money. It's asinine. Anyways, I'm the Sprouticus. You can find me at twitch.tv/thesprouticus or twitter.com/thesprouticus. Come give me a follow.
And lastly, Irish Laddie.
I'll keep it short. Dylan deserves to go to sleep. Yeah, it's an imperfect solution. These things often are. If I went back through the history of major landmark cases that I support in the U.S., I doubt I would be perfectly satisfied with any of them. My hope would be it could be, as you said, an emergency measure, which could be rescinded or amended more significantly in the future. It's just really difficult to get the political will to get anything like this done. Anyway, I'm Vaush. You can find me at Vaush. Been a tremendous pleasure, unironically, and I hope you all have a wonderful night, especially you, Dylan.
Thank you very much. You all have a blessed one. And for everybody watching, be sure to keep tuning in for more streams from Poland. and who knows where else. Thank you guys for stopping by for this Friday. You all have a good one.
Hey, you too.
Night.
Cheers, Dylan.
Catch you later.